Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Cabbage Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Shapeshifting Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. This story will be in third person or reader's perspective. We see a 4-year-old Izuku wearing a pink onesie that he loves running to his mother's room acting like it's Christmas even though it's the middle of summer. Mommy, wake up. Izuku cheered excitedly. I'm up. What is it? Inko asked groggily. When are we going to the doctor's today? Asked with excitement a child wouldn't usually express about going to the doctor's office. I don't know, are you sick? Inko asked teasingly. Izuku started to cry thinking his mother forgot his birthday, though she'd never do that. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetie. No, I didn't forget, and we're heading in at around 10 so we have plenty time, so go get dressed, while I make breakfast. Ok. Inko said soothingly. Okowo. Izuku responded with the cheer back on his face and in his voice. Time skipped to doctor's office after tests. Well, it seems little Izuku here has a quirk. The doctor announced. Alright, what is it? Inko asked curiously. It's shapeshifting. Now this quirk is an interesting one. It seems that while the amount of forms he can shapeshift into aren't limited, excluding things like other people or inanimate objects. Like for example, he could turn into a mosquito, or he could turn into the abominable snowman. He can also do partial shifts. The doctor explained. However, these transformations burn up quite a bit of stamina, so until he's a couple years older he shouldn't overdo it. Oh wow, that's a strong quirk. You hear that, Izuku? You can be a hero. Inko cheered. Izuku upon hearing those words broke out into a broad grin, and he held his arm up like All Might when he's doing his victory pose. Time skipped to home. As soon as they got home, Izuku ran to his room and started practicing his quirk even though the doctor said to wait until he had more stamina. He started by trying turn his hand into a hoof. After a few tries he got it, but he couldn't maintain it more than a few seconds. He kept trying till Inko called him for supper. When he went down he saw Katsudon. He ran over to the table and waited for his mom to be ready to eat before he dug in. After supper he decided to help his mom with the dishes before heading back up to his room. Mama's little helper, aren't you? Inko teased. I love you, mommy. Izuku responded with adoration in his voice. When he got back to his room he continued training but upped it to just beyond his wrist. He did this until he passed out from exhaustion. Izuku's room is only half filled with All Might merch, the other half is filled with homemade Eraserhead merch since he's a new underground hero, so not enough people know about him to make a profit, so they don't make merch about him. Now while they aren't professional level, they are still excellent for a 4-year-old. When he woke up he got dressed in his favorite pink shirt and headed downstairs to eat breakfast with his mom before she had to drop him off at school and head to work. After breakfast he once again helped his mom with the dishes, which he has been doing since he could remember. With the dishes done they headed to school, then Inko headed off to work. When recess finally rolled around everybody went outside and was about to head off to do whatever they normally do until Bakugo said something interesting. Hey Izuku, didn't you go get your quirk checked out yesterday? Bakugo asked with something unknown in his voice. Yes, Kak and I did. Izuku exclaimed. His announcement drew everybody back to center of the playground where Izuku and Bakugo were. Well, let's see it. Bakugo demanded. Izuku then turned his hand up to half his forearm into that of what to him was a unicorn, but to everybody else it was that of a horse. Useless, just like you. I know we should call you Demi, defenseless Izumi, since you're so girly. Bakugo said with malice. After he said that, he shoved Izuku to the ground only for all the girls of the class to get in his way. They, unknowingly, made it worse for Izuku since Bakugo wanted everyone to fall in line and praise him. This isn't over, Demi. Bakugo shouted in anger. And with that began Izuku's life of torment, borderline torture. Time skipped 2 years later. Izuku is waiting for his mom to pick him up when Bakugo and his gang grabbed him and dragged him to the nearest alley, but unbeknownst to them a certain hero that's only been on the job for 2 years spotted the look of terror in Izuku's eyes. Eraserhead walked to the alley, and his first thought upon seeing all 3 boys beating on Izuku was, I shoulda run. Eraserhead thought, chastising himself. That's when he noticed Bakugo using his quirk on Izuku. When Bakugo went for the second round on Izuku, his quirk didn't activate, making him think Izuku did something to him. "What did you do to my quirk, Demi?" Bakugo shouted in anger with a growl in his voice. Izuku knew immediately who stopped Bakugo's quirk, especially when the grayish-white cloth wrapped up all three of his attackers, but he didn't say anything. Eraserhead walked over and picked up Izuku, who flinched at the contact but didn't fight back. Eraserhead walked out of the alley and over to the school, passing by a very worried Inko and a very annoyed Mitsuki. When Inko and Mitsuki saw a beaten-up Izuku being carried by a man towards the school, they immediately followed him. When he entered the school's main office, he asked the receptionist if the school nurse was still here, causing her to look up and see the state of Izuku and gasp before jumping up and leading him to the nurse's office with Inko and Mitsuki following. After setting Izuku on the cot in the nurse's office, he headed back towards the main office, still dragging all three with him. "Old hag, get this dude off of me," Bakugo ordered. After hearing this, Mitsuki looked up and spotted her son being dragged away and followed. When they reached the main office, Eraserhead headed straight for the door labeled Principal's Office and knocked. After hearing a "come in," he opened the door, dragging the three boys in and Mitsuki following. "Why do you have three of my students tied up?" the principal asked, confused. "I found these three beating on a student I already dropped off at the nurse's office," Eraserhead explained. "All right, I'll call those two's parents, as the third's mother is already behind you," the principal said before pointing at the upset Mitsuki. After the other two's parents showed up, the principal called in their teacher, cause she had already said that these three had been reported for bullying another student but didn't say which one. It came to the final conclusion that they'd be suspended for a week and the at-home punishment would be left up to the parents. After this incident, Eraserhead often stopped over to check up on Izuku and actually got him to trust him and started him on working out, so he was strong enough to start learning the basics of a couple fighting styles. As Eraserhead was working with Izuku, him and Inko started getting closer and went on a couple dates, then decided to put a label on their relationship and see where it goes from there. Time skipped 2 years later again. We see Izuku on the playground in the sandbox, alone practicing his quirk. He's now able to hold his entire arm in a partial shift no problem. He's also got some muscle thanks to the training regimen Aizawa, or Dad as Izuku calls him now, started him on. Both Izuku and Inko switched their names to Aizawa, as Midoriya was Inko's maiden name. Izuku was practicing shifting his ears into an animal's, and after he succeeded in making his ears shift into cat ears on top of his head, he heard a girl crying and Bakugo and his gang's laughter. He got up and charged in that direction, only to see a girl with onyx eyes and long black hair on the ground crying while Bakugo is laughing at and insulting her and her quirk. Something in Izuku snapped and he shifted his nose into a rhino's horn and charged at Bakugo, effectively shoving him away from the girl. "Oh, look at this, the precious Demi actually fighting back for once," Bakugo taunted before his voice turned to anger. "I guess it's time to teach him what happens when he fights back." Just before Bakugo can throw his first attack, Izuku regains his normal ears and nose and shifts both his arms up to the elbows into hippo arms for more protection, while putting them up into an X to block their attacks. After a while, Bakugo and his gang got bored as they couldn't seem to hurt Izuku and Izuku wasn't fighting back. But before they left, Bakugo got a cheap shot on Izuku's stomach, leaving him on the ground holding his stomach. "That's what you get for standing against me, Demi," Bakugo shouted over his shoulder, clearly proud of what he did to Izuku. After Bakugo walked off, the girl came out from behind the tree she hid behind and ran over to Izuku, who was still holding his stomach. When she reached him, tears started streaming down her face, and when the first one landed on Izuku's now human arm, he immediately forgot about the pain in his stomach, focusing on the crying girl. "Are you okay? You're not hurt anywhere, are you?" Izuku asked, worried about the girl. "No, but you are," the girl responded. "As long as you are fine, then I am fine," Izuku said soothingly. "I'm Momo Yaoyorozu, what's your name?" Momo introduced. "Izuku Aizawa, what's your quirk?" Izuku introduced before asking. After Izuku said that, Momo looked nervous. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to," Izuku said, worried. "My quirk is creation. I can create any non-living object with my lipids as long as I know what it's made of," Momo answered cautiously. "Your quirk is so cool, honestly perfect for hero work. Izuku declared excitedly. Think about it, you need something to defeat the villain and boom you got it. You need a tool to rescue a trapped civilian and boom you got it. You need a first aid kit for an injured civilian and boom you got it. Izuku exclaimed with even greater excitement the longer he talked. Mine is shapeshifting. I can shapeshift into anything other than people or plants or objects. Nobody other than my parents have told me I could become a hero, thank you. Momo said with tears of joy in her eyes. Momo, it's time to go. Mrs. Yaoyorozu called. I hope to see you again. Momo said, waving goodbye. I do too, I will see you at UO, won't I? Izuku asked. You will. Momo declared. With that, Momo headed over to her mom, who said something that made Momo blush and wave her arms around. Izuku then headed home, where he sees his mom just starting dinner, so he heads over to help her like usual. After they eat dinner, Izuku helps wash the dishes and starts the laundry, then heads up to his room to continue working on his quirk training. Time skipped to the day of the sludge villain incident. As time went on, after all the boys hit puberty, they all started bullying and attacking Izuku cause he took all the girls from them, so he now is terrified of any male unless he's fighting. That's a completely different story. He has almost no fear when fighting. The only reason that he has any fear is because he's scared of someone getting hurt, because he screws up. He has also gained the habit of staying shifted into a baby black unicorn at home ever since he was able to do a full shift. The teacher walks in with a stack of papers in his hands. I know I'm supposed to hand these career aptitude tests, but I know you all want to be heroes. The teacher announced. After he said that, he threw the papers in the air with all but Bakugo and Izuku showing off their quirks. Settle down, you know it's against the rules to use quirks on school grounds. Now it seems Bakugo is going to UA. The teacher said like it was a grand announcement, like Bakugo had already gotten in. As he said this, probably to feed his favorite student's ego, people were talking about how hard it is to get into UA. Then Bakugo goes on about how awesome he thinks he is. Then the teacher smirks and looks at Izuku. It seems like Aizawa is too. The teacher said with a nasty smirk on his face. You damn demi, I thought I told you not to apply to you. Bakugo shouted in a rage. As he yelled that, he tried to get close enough to launch an explosion, but the girls of the class got in his way, preventing that from happening. The teacher then tells everyone to get back to their seats. What the girls didn't know was that they were just making it worse for Izuku, and he didn't have the heart to tell them. As Izuku is walking home from school, taking the long way to avoid the guys from his class, he enters under a tunnel only for a slime dude to attack him, talking about how he's the perfect cover. Izuku dodges several times before he trips over something and the sludge villain catches him. So he decides to use his quirk and turns into a fire elemental. He spits Izuku out to get away from him before he evaporates. Ouch, damn, that's hot. The sludge villain says in pain. Izuku transforms back into his human form just as All Might bursts through the manhole that the villain had come from and one punches it. Then he notices Izuku and sees the terrified expression on his face and tries to slowly approach him, only for Izuku to look even more scared and take off running towards his house. All Might, in too much shock, doesn't go after him till he's already lost sight of him, so he turns around and scoops up the villain into 2 empty bottles and puts them in his cargo pants, but forgets to button them up. So when he jumps away to the police station, the bottles fall out. Izuku on his way home hears an explosion and decides to investigate. When he finally gets to the site of the explosion, he sees someone he thought he wouldn't see for another 10 months, but she's in danger again. When he sees that the pros aren't doing anything, he charges in, throwing his backpack and hitting the sludge villain in the eye, getting Momo to be able to breathe and get a handout, and Izuku continues charging and shifting into a werewolf in front of everyone. He grabs Momo's hand and pulls her out of the sludge villain before punching it to pieces, though not ending it. The air pressure from the punch put out the fire and condensing and dispersing some of the clouds, making it rain. Then he sets Momo down and shifts back into human form. Hey Momo, how you been? Izuku greets, trying to keep her calm. How do you know my name? Momo asked, confused. Let me give you a hint. Izuku said. Izuku then puts cat ears on his head and a rhino horn for his nose, before taking them off. OMG Izuku! Momo shouted excitedly. Momo jumps at Izuku only to realize she's taller than him by about 8 inches. but to her it only makes him that much more adorable. She notices him start to shake in fear when the pro-heroes start to come closer, so she puts him behind her and away from the heroes. They seem to get the message from her glare and back off, letting them leave. Izuku walks her home so they can catch up. "Why were you afraid when they started coming towards us?" Momo asked sternly. "Every boy except my dad, well, stepdad, beats on me every chance they get." Izuku answered tearfully, knowing that there was no way around it. Izuku had started crying when she asked that, as he has gotten a collection of scars over the years from the constant attacks portrayed by his peers, some instigated by his teachers. Momo, seeing his tears as she was looking at him in shock, quickly pulls him into a hug. After a while she breaks the hug and they continue on their way towards the Yaoyorozu mansion. After they get there and say their goodbyes, Izuku starts running to his house so he can get there in time to help his mom with dinner. When he walks through the door, he's met by his mom tackling him in a hug, crying. She keeps looking him over for any injuries even when she sees none. "Mama infine. Now what are we cooking tonight?" Izuku said, struggling to breathe in the tight hug. Izuku woke up this morning and decided he was gonna go to Dagoba Municipal Beach and clean it to help out the community. Izuku told his mother and she decided to hire a truck and driver to help him out. When Izuku arrived to the beach/dumping spot, he immediately started moving the small stuff up to the parking lot. For about 3 hours Izuku worked without taking a break, and the truck finally arrived, seeing the small mountain of garbage already in the parking lot. The driver sees Izuku carrying another load of garbage up the steps, and she seems to understand why the truck was hired. When Izuku sees the truck, he places his load on the pile and heads up to the driver. "Are you the person my mom hired to drive the garbage to the proper dump location?" Izuku asked politely. "I am." The driver responds. "Well then, thank you for your time, miss." Izuku trails off, not knowing her name. "Emi Fukukado, but call me Emi." "And you are?" Ms. Joke introduces herself. "I'm Izuku Aizawa. It's nice to meet you, Ms. Joke, and before you freak out, I only know 'cause Dad talks about you." Izuku rambles. "So Eraserhead talks about me?" Ms. Joke asks curiously. "What does he say?" "Yeah, he talks about how your jokes are actually funny, but how he has to keep up the grumpy facade around others." Izuku says without thinking. When Izuku realized what he said, he slaps his hand over his mouth. "Oh no, I wasn't supposed to tell anyone that." Izuku says, hands still over his mouth. Ms. Joke bursts out laughing and eventually Izuku joins in. When they finally stop, Izuku asks if he can start loading the garbage into the truck, and Ms. Joke decides to help him. As the months went by, Izuku and Ms. Joke, or as he decided to call her, with her permission, and Emi cleaned the entire beach, upping Izuku's strength and everything. Whenever a news crew would try and catch the boy who people are taking pictures and small videos of him helping Ms. Joke, he would shift into an ant and climb on Emi's shoe and wait for them to leave. Luckily nobody but Aizawa caught on, and he had a real laugh at the disappointed faces on the press when they never got the scoop. They finished cleaning the beach about a month and a half early, so Izuku asked Aizawa something. "Hey Dad." Izuku inquired. "Yes, bud." Mr. Aizawa responded curiously. "Can you teach me how to use a capture scarf?" asked, giving the puppy dog eyes. "Sure, although it takes more than a month and a half to learn." Mr. Aizawa says. "By the way, what am I gonna call you in school?" Izuku asks. "Confident are we? And if you get in, during school hours you will call me Mr. Aizawa." He responds. "Thanks, Dad." Izuku says before heading to his room for the night. So, for the remaining time until the entrance exam, Eraserhead and Izuku were out in a clearing in the woods with Eraserhead teaching him how to use the capture scarf. And against Eraserhead's statement, Izuku learned how to use the capture weapon in a month and spent the rest of the time perfecting his own technique and improving his skill, all while keeping up with his regular training and Quirk training. It's now the day of the entrance exam. Mr. Aizawa offered Izuku his first ever recommendation, but Izuku denied, saying he wanted to earn his place in UA and not be handed it. This made a rare proud smile show on his face. Izuku arrives at UA and looks up in awe. He trips on the pavement, but before he hits the ground he starts to float. "Sorry for using my quirk on you without permission." "Nice scarf, by the way," a girl says with a bright smile. "Thank you. I'm Izuku Aizawa, by the way, and no need to be sorry." Izuku reassures. I'm Ohako Uraraka. She introduces herself. After that they both went in to take the exam. They sat next to each other in the auditorium. Midnight came in and said that they had 2 hours for the test in front of them. About 10 minutes later, Izuku walks up to Midnight to hand in his test. Are you quitting or are you finished? Midnight asked surprised. I'm finished. The test was really easy although there were a couple errors in the questioning, though they looked purposefully placed. Izuku replied with a smile. Well, alright then, proceed to the next auditorium and wait till the others are finished. Midnight said, surprise still evident on her face. Thank you, Izuku said with an even brighter smile. With that said, Izuku headed to the auditorium and sat in the far back corner and pulled his book about mythological/fantasy creatures out of wherever Niza gets his tea, and started reading. He was so absorbed in learning about the new creatures in the book that he didn't notice the room start to fill with people. That is, until Present Mike started screaming about the practical exam, making Izuku drop his book in his lap out of fear. When he realized that nobody was near him, he relaxed, picked up his book and put it back where he got it from, then paid attention to what PM was saying, although he already knew about the practical since he read the handout before even coming to the exam. At his exam city, Izuku spotted Uraraka about to have a meltdown, so he started to head over to her when he dodged a hand and kept moving. Calm down, you got this, Izuku said reassuringly. Thank you, Uraraka said after steadying her breathing. The blue-haired boy that tried to stop Izuku started harshly berating himself for his foolish assumption. When the doors opened, Izuku immediately shifted into his werewolf form and took off into the city, leaving a group of people laughing at him until PM asked them what they were doing and told them that there are no countdowns in real life. After 7 minutes, Izuku had tied AM score and decided to leave some robots for the others, and took a page out of his dad's book and took a nap, or that's what he was going to do until the ground started shaking. He went to see what it was only to see the 0-pointer. He was about to follow the other students till he heard a cry for help. Izuku turned back around and spotted Uraraka trapped under some rubble from a building. Izuku then turned into a giant cyclopes the size of the 0-pointer and easily reached over and ripped its head off, leaving the robot standing stable so it wouldn't fall and hurt anyone. He then set the head on top of a random building and shifted into his werewolf form and got the rubble off of Uraraka. He then went back to human form. Can you walk? Izuku asked worriedly. No, I think my ankle is broken, said with a pained expression. Climb on after I'm done, Izuku instructed. Izuku then shifted into a black unicorn, then crouched low enough for Uraraka to climb on. When she got on and got stable, Izuku started walking towards the gate. When he got to the gate where the examinees were all huddled up terrified, they heard his hooves on the pavement and looked towards him and Uraraka in awe. They also parted like the Red Sea for Moses so he could walk through and get to Recovery Girl so she could heal Uraraka. After she kissed Uraraka's ankle, she told her good night and asked Izuku to take her to the infirmary. After Izuku got done setting Uraraka on a bed in the infirmary, he shifted back to human form and headed to the observation room. Dad, I'm ready to go when you are, Izuku said. Sure, let's go, Mr. Aizawa said, getting up. Half the teachers passed out from shock when Aizawa responded, including Midnight. It's been a week since the entrance exams and there has been no word. Izuku is starting to get scared but puts on a brave face so he doesn't worry his mom. All of a sudden, Inko starts screaming for Izuku that his letter has arrived. Izuku rushes out of his room to where Inko is in the living room with his letter. He decides to open the letter with his mom. When he opens the envelope, a small metal disc fell onto the coffee table. Izuku picked up the disc and realized it was a hologram projector, so he put it back on the table and pressed the button to start the message. Hello, Mr. Midoriya. Normally your homeroom teacher would be the one to tell you your results, but this year we had All Might do them, though I am doing yours for 2 reasons. 1. Mr. Aizawa has informed me 1 year passed and the resulting difficulties caused by it, and 2, because while you finished a test that would take 3rd years at least 40 minutes to finish, you only took 10 even with spotting the purposefully hidden errors, and noticed that they were purposely hidden. So I would like you to come to my office when you arrive on Monday. The hologram of Nizu said in his cheerful voice. Now as for the practical exam. You tied All Might's record with your villain points alone, yet we were also counting points from a hidden category. So when we added your rescue points onto your villain points, you far surpassed All Might's record, therefore setting a high bar for yourself. Though the only person doubting that you'll live up to our expectations is All Might himself, though I think it's more about his record was broken than anything. Welcome to your hero academia. Nizu cheered. You did it, Izuku. I'm so proud of you. Inko cheered, very delighted that her son can achieve his dream. Thank you, I love you, Mom. Izuku said with his bright smile. Wait a minute, did he say you broke All Might's record? Inko said upon processing the rest of what was said. I think he did, though I was more paying attention to the fact that I actually passed. Izuku said, clearly still a bit dazed with excitement. Well, I'm making katsudon to celebrate. Inko declared, joy filling the house. Let me help you. Izuku said, about to get up. What class are you in? Inko asked curiously. He's in my class. Also, all staff have been informed of your fear, and as such all male members have been persuaded, more like threatened, by Nizu to keep a decent distance to prevent panic attacks and such. Aizawa said, entering the house. Nizu has also started construction on a separate changing room for you, but it won't be done till the day after tomorrow. Time skip. We see Izuku arrive at UA early for his meeting with Nizu and start looking for the main office. After a while of searching, Izuku finally arrives, yet it is at least a half an hour till school starts. He knocks on the door and waits till he hears a soft come in from the other side. Izuku, welcome. I wanted to see you after hearing about your time and grading your test form from the entrance exam, and I would like you to take this test. You have 1 hour, so it's good you arrived earlier than anticipated. Nizu said after Izuku took his seat. Izuku just nods his head and takes the test while sitting at the coffee table. He takes a little bit longer on this test than the entrance exam because he wanted to double-check his answers. So he handed the test back to Nizu only 15 minutes after receiving it. This will take about 30 minutes to calculate your score, so why don't we play a round of chess or two? Nizu offered, wanting to see if Izuku could compete with him. Sure, it would be an honor to compete in a match against the smartest mind on the planet. Izuku said, sitting at the chess table. Nizu hopped off his chair and headed over to the small chess table already set up on the side of his office. The first round took a total of 10 minutes with Nizu coming out on top. And since there was plenty of time, they set up for round 2. This match took 20 minutes, and when Nizu thought he finally had Izuku cornered, Izuku flipped the table, metaphorically, and put Nizu in checkmate. The machine calculating Izuku's test finally beeped off just as Izuku said, checkmate, so Nizu put the fact that, for the first time ever, he lost at a strategy game at the back of his mind, though he was still internally raging and finding out he is a very sore loser, and went to review the score only to have his jaw drop. Principal Nizu, is everything alright? Izuku asked worriedly. Yes, although from now on you shall call me Uncle Nizu, my intellectual equal. It appears that both you and I share an IQ score of 245. Nizu said with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Oh, don't tell Dad or he might try and ban you from seeing me, to prevent me becoming a Nizu 2.0, as her would call it. Izuku warned, jokingly. True. In that case it shall be our little secret, although you shall still refer to me Uncle Nizu. Nizu insisted. Yes, Uncle Nizu. Izuku said, much to Nizu's delight. Now head over to the changing rooms and head out to the field where your class is. And take this P uniform with you. Nizu said, handing the uniform to Izuku. Bye, Uncle Nizu. Izuku said, waving before heading off. With that, Izuku headed towards the changing rooms he spotted on his way to the office. After getting changed, Izuku headed out to the field just after everybody else. When he got there, he decided to wake his dad up, so he picked up a stick that was laying on the ground and poked the yellow caterpillar on the ground. No, don't do that. He could hurt you. Momo called out fearfully. Mr. Aizawa won't hurt me. Izuku said calmly with a smile. Damn problem, child. Alright, everybody listen up. Today we're doing a Quirk apprehension test. Aizawa started only to get interrupted. But what about orientation and introductions? Uraraka said, confused. There is no need for such useless ceremonies. Now first place, please step forward. Aizawa said, slightly agitated. Bakugo stepped forward looking as cocky as ever. I said first place, not second. Aizawa said plainly, but you could see the joy in his eyes. Bakugo faltered in his step with a stunned look on his face before it quickly morphed into anger. Which one of you useless extras dared to score higher than me? Bakugo shouted enraged, nearly foaming at the mouth. Shut up or I'll expel you, Izawa threatened. Now Izuku, please come up here. Izuku stepped forward, nervous and timid, making people doubt that he got first. Step into the circle and get this ball as far as possible. Anything goes as long as you stay in the circle, Izawa instructed. Izuku walked into circle and shifted into his werewolf form and caught the ball as Izawa threw it to him, careful not to crush it. He reared his arm back and into a professional pitcher's stance and threw the ball as hard as he could, but ran fast enough to get in front of the students and his dad to block them from being blown away. The wind was enough that it damaged the trees, making Izuku feel bad, so he shifted into a dryad to use nature magic to heal the trees. The girls all awed at the now 4-foot-tall dryad Izuku, making him blush in a shade of green. This looks like so much fun. Ashido cheered, causing a shiver to run up Izuku's spine from when he called training with his dad fun. Then let's make this even more fun. The person in last place gets expelled, Izawa said with his signature smirk. That's not fair, Uraraka shouted, pouting like a child. Neither is life, now get on with it, Izawa said, not caring for her outburst. 50 Meter dash. Izuku shifted into Arion, the immortal horse from Greek mythology, frying the machine that was trying to calculate his speed. Grip test. He shifted into his werewolf form and broke the machine. Standing long jump. He shifted into a unipeg, flying over the sandbox. Repeated side steps. He did as a regular human to conserve stamina. Shited tutuch. He did as human and managed to stretch over his toes. Seed oops. He did as human and was told to stop. Distance run. He shifted into his unicorn and ran till he was told to stop. I can't be bothered to tell your individual score, so look at the board, Izawa said tiredly. 1. Izuku Izawa. 2. Momo Yaoyorozu. 3. Shoto Todoroki. 4. Katsuki Bakugo. 5. Tenya Ida. 20. Minoru Mineta. Mineta was bawling his eyes out, laying on the ground. The expulsion was a lie, Izawa said cheekily with his smirk plastered on his face and the sight of Mineta bawling his eyes out. What? Everyone but Izuku and Momo screamed. Izuku then hid behind Momo, who he was standing beside. I thought everyone knew, should I have told you? Momo asked, unsure. Yes. Everyone but Izuku screamed at her. Actually, Momo, he wasn't lying. If he saw someone he thought had no potential, he would have expelled them. Just like his class last year. Izuku whispered in her ear, both from fright and not wanting to embarrass her. All right, everyone go get changed back into your regular uniforms. Izuku, hang back a minute, Izawa said, dismissing everyone. As they all head off to the locker rooms, Izuku walks over to Izawa. What did you need, Mr. Izawa? That still feels weird, Izuku asked politely. Yes, it does, but I'm just giving you an excuse to wait until they are all done, Izawa explained with a gentle smile on his face. Thank you, but they should be done by now, or at least by the time I get there, Izuku said, getting a nod from Izawa. With that, Izuku headed off to the now empty locker room, changed, and headed to class, where he found his seat at the back corner of the class with Momo's seat beside him and Jiro's seat in front of him. I suggest we do introductions. We'll start with desk 1. Ida said. My name's Katsuki Bakugo and I'm leagues above all you extras, so don't get in my way. Got it? Bakugo said cockily and prideful. Hi, my name's Izuku Izawa. I like the color pink and unicorns. Izuku introduced himself shyly. Oh. All the girls cooed while Mineta cursed him silently. What's your connection to Yamamoto? I heard you call her by her given name, Jiro asked, jealousy slipping into her voice, but that went unnoticed by both Izuku and Momo. He saved me from a bully when we were 8, and then again saved me from that sludge villain 10 months ago, Momo answered calmly. That was the first time I ever hit someone. The second time was the sludge villain, Izuku said, remembering both of those times. Oh wow, ain't that romantic, a boy who only fights when the girl of his dreams is in danger, Ashido said with a fake swoon. Ashido's statement causes both of them to blush like crazy. I don't have any feelings like that for him, Momo said embarrassingly. I don't for her either. Izuku whispered but was heard by all. So what you're saying is that you're still on the market? Ashido asked flirtatiously. What does that mean? Izuku asked, very confused. As Ashido goes to answer, all the girls except Momo leaps and put their hands over her mouth, preventing her from speaking. No ruining the cinnamon roll. All girls but Ashido whispered. Ashido does the only thing she can, which is raise her hands in surrender. I still don't understand what she meant. Izuku stated, still very confused. You don't need to Izu. Momo said in a maternal tone. Izu? Izuku asked, slightly startled. Just a nickname. Momo answered innocently. Wait, Aizawa? Are you Mr. Aizawa's secret love child? Todoroki asked, pulling a notebook out of nowhere. All right, everybody get out of here and go home. Aizawa ordered. But I need answers. Todoroki demanded. He's not a secret love child, but he is my child, blood or not. Now get out of here. Aizawa said with hidden emotions that weren't picked up by anyone but Izuku, who smiled at him. We see Izuku in class waiting for the next lesson when all of a sudden the door flies open and in comes All Might in a weird pose. I am coming through the door like a normal person. All Might shouted, bursting through the door. The class, minus Izuku, who turned himself into a fruit fly on reflex, shouted in surprise and awe. I heard there were 20 of you, yet I only count 19. All Might said questioningly. Izuku, who had turned back, was hiding behind Hagakure, weirdly successfully. Don't worry, we're all here. You just spooked one of us. Momo reassured. Sorry, anyway, on to today's lesson. All Might apologized before moving on. Today we are doing battle training. Bakugo smiled viciously at the thought of battle training. A wall opened up to show their hero costumes. Izuku grabbed his costume and left the room, seeing as he was already beside the costumes. Once everyone was at the training site, All Might began explaining the lesson. If you are reading this, then you know the scenario. Izuku Aizawa and Momo Yaoyorozu are Team A, the heroes. Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida are Team B, the villains. Villains have 5 minutes to prepare. Heroes have 5 minutes to plan. Time starts now. All Might instructed through note cards. Bakugo is gonna come straight for me, so when he does you can run past him and head for the bomb. Izuku said to Momo with a serious look on his face. What about you? Momo questioned worriedly. I'll be fine. Just focus on Ida, he's smart and has probably already thought of a way to counter you. Izuku assessed quickly. But he also seems like the above and beyond type, so he'll probably be monologuing like a stereotypical villain. That'll give away his position. Alright, but if you get hurt, even All Might won't be able to hold me back. Momo said, not liking the plan. Heroes may enter. All Might instructs. Izuku and Momo enter the building and Izuku shifts his ears into cat ears. They make it to the 3rd floor before Izuku picks up the explosions caused by Bakugo. He then shifts his ears back to normal to prevent sensory overload due to increased noise. Here he comes, get ready? Izuku said and Momo nodded. As Bakugo comes around the corner, Izuku uses his capture scarf and grabs Bakugo before throwing him into the wall, knocking him out cold. I guess we don't split up then. Momo said, relieved. Momo walks over to Bakugo and wraps the capture tape around him, then heads back to Izuku. They then head up to the 5th floor where they hear Ida doing a monologue just like Izuku predicted. Momo decided it was her turn to play distraction. Izuku turned into a monarch butterfly and stuck to the shadows. Momo acted like she could no longer hold in her laugh by doubling over in laughter. Aha, there you are, hero. Ida said, forcing his voice a bit lower than normal. Ida then rushes at Momo, not noticing the orange butterfly heading towards the bomb. Heroes win. All Might declared joyously. What, how? Ida questioned, surprised. That would be me. Izuku said quietly and nervously. Ida whipped around so fast that he might have gotten whiplash from it. I must say that was a smart play. I thought that you'd still be busy with Bakugo. Ida commented. Izuku shyly nodded at him, then all 3 of them headed to get Bakugo and head to the observation room. The only problem was that he wasn't there. Maybe somebody already came and got him. Momo suggested with a shrug of her shoulders. But she didn't even sound like she herself believed it. Most probable, Ida said with a weird hand gesture. They then proceeded to the exit. Once they were outside and headed towards the others, Izuku heard something in the alley and spotted Bakugo with his arm raised and pointed at them. He immediately shifted into a rock golem and shielded the others by crouching over them with his back to the blast. Young Bakugo, don't! All Might shouted. The exercise is over, do not pull that pin. All Might ordered over the earpiece, only to be ignored by Bakugo. If you pull that pin you will be expelled. All Might's shouts fell on deaf ears as Bakugo pulled the pin and set off the massive explosion. The blast knocked Izuku out of the transformation and the flames from the explosion left third-degree burns on his body. Seeing that Izuku survived the explosion, Bakugo went to pull the pin from the other gauntlet, making Izuku shift back into the golem form again despite the injuries and lack of stamina. But before Bakugo could pull the pin, All Might arrived and put Quirk canceling cuffs on him. Katsuki Bakugo, you are under arrest for attempted murder. All Might said. He was missing his usual smile and it was replaced by a frown of sadness. You can't arrest me, I'm gonna be the #1 hero. Bakugo shouted enraged. I'll get you for this, Demi. All Might ignored Bakugo's shouts as he dragged him to Principal Nizu's office. The class and Aizawa arrived to where Izuku, Momo, and Ida are, all worried for Izuku. Izuku, are you alright? Momo asked with tears streaming down her face. Answer me, Izuku. Izuku shifted back, letting the whole group see the burns all over his back. It hurts. Please, make it stop. Izuku begged with tears streaming down his face due to the pain. Izuku passed out from both the pain and exhaustion, making everybody even more worried for him. Aizawa picked him up, shouting for everybody to get out of the way, which they did, before full-out sprinting to Recovery Girl's office. What happened? Recovery Girl questioned, shocked at the extent of the injury on Izuku. I should have gone with my gut and blacklisted that bastard from all hero schools. Aizawa said with clear rage in his voice. I'm gonna end him for what he did. Well, lay him down so I can treat him, though he may be in here for a while. Recovery Girl said, already prepping. And you'll have to talk to Nizu about that second part. Aizawa laid Izuku on a bed and let Recovery Girl tend to him. He'll be fine, but there will be some scarring on his back. Recovery Girl said after assessing the damage before using her quirk. Thank you, now I'm gonna go and see Nizu. Aizawa said, already turning to leave. Aizawa left the office looking like he had somewhere to be. The students currently in the hallway parted like the Red Sea at the sight of the angry pro. When Aizawa arrived at Nizu's office, he just barged in, no knocking nor warning. Mitsuki and Masaru Bakugo, who were there talking with Nizu about their son, jumped at the sudden entrance of their friend's husband. Shota, what are you doing here? Masaru questioned, surprised. Eraserhead here is a faculty member and your son's homeroom teacher. Nizu said to the surprise of the two other parents. Wait, you're a pro hero? Mitsuki questioned, shocked with the information. An underground hero. Aizawa answered bluntly. Where is Katsuki and why were we called here? Masaru asked, getting back to the original question. He is currently in an on-site detainment facility for attempting to murder fellow students who bested him in the hero training after the exercise was already completed. Nizu answered plainly. Sure, he has an overwhelming amount of pride, but he wouldn't do something like that. Mitsuki said, not believing her ears. We have the security footage from the attack. The student who protected the other two is currently in the infirmary for an undetermined amount of time. He will also have permanent scarring on his back. The scarring will cover at the very least 70% of his back, and at the most his entire back. Nizu informed them, and Mitsuki covered her mouth in shock while Masaru looked down in shame for his son's actions. Nizu played the entire tape of the match to Bakugo's attempt, with the audio so they could hear All Might telling him to stop and the pain he caused Izuku. This is not the first time Bakugo has attacked others. He has been attacking Izuku since preschool. Aizawa said to the shock of the Bakugos present in the room. This is my fault. If I had listened to my gut instead of Izuku, he wouldn't be in the infirmary with potentially permanent damage. What do you mean, eraser? Nizu asked curiously. During middle school, when the attacks started getting even worse, I was gonna blacklist Bakugo from every hero school worldwide. But Izuku begged me to give him a chance to change, but then the attacks started happening from every male on campus. Teachers and other faculty often instigated and turned a blind eye to what was happening. It got bad enough that Izuku is now terrified of any male excluding myself, Yumasuru, and Principal Nizu, though that may be more of the fact that he's not human. Aizawa explained, pain clear in his voice despite his best effort to hide it. So you're saying that even though Katsuki has been verbally and physically attacking him for years, Izuku still wanted to give him a chance? Mitsuki questioned in the hopes that she misunderstood what was said. Yes, and that is what landed him in the infirmary. Aizawa said, tears in his eyes, that he is trying to blink away. We won't ask you to drop the charges, but we will, out of love for Katsuki, ask you to lower them. Masaru said, bowing his head. We already were planning on lowering them, cause if word got out that a student of UA tried to end another, then parents might pull their kids. Nizu explained. As it is, we're already gonna lose a level of trust from the people over this incident. Shota, do you mind if we stop by the infirmary to see how Izuku is doing? Mitsuki asked with worry for Izuku in her voice. I don't mind, but I will ask that you not disturb him if he's still sleeping. You may see your son if you wish, he won't be transported to the prison until tomorrow. Aizawa said while lifting Masaru's head. After you leave, will you head to Inko and tell her what happened? I'm gonna stay here with him. Aizawa asked the two. She doesn't know that Katsuki has been attacking Izuku for years, as he didn't want her to worry more than she already did. Thank you, Mitsuki said. Of course, we'll help her however we can while Izuku recovers. The Bakugos got up and left, heading for the infirmary after they were given directions by Nizu. When they arrived and saw the condition Izuku was in, wrapped in bandages, while laying on his stomach with nothing covering his back, they could see the blood bleeding through the bandages. Masaru clenched his fist in anger at what Katsuki did to the sweetest boy he ever knew. Recovery Girl spotted them and went over. What is your relation to him? Recovery Girl asked politely. We're his aunt and uncle. Mitsuki answered, sadness plain in her voice. Would you like the update, or would you rather hear it from his parents? Recovery Girl asked them. We're heading over to see his mother to let her know what has happened after we leave. Shota is gonna stay here with him. So if you could please? Masaru asked respectfully. Well, it'll take about a week for him to leave the infirmary, but even after that he'll have to take it easy for another week while the scar firms up to prevent from reopening any part of the wound. Recovery Girl explains. The scarring, no matter how many times I use my quirk on him, will cover 90% of his back. Thank you for trying your hardest, Masaru said, bowing his head in gratitude. The Bakugos left towards Nizu's office, having a conversation on the way, and knocked on the door. Komein, Nizu said, already knowing who it was thanks to a hidden camera by his door. It's us again. We were wondering if we could see Katsuki for a couple minutes. Mitsuki asked while bowing her head. Of course, right this way. Nizu said, getting off of his chair to lead them there. Nizu led them to the detainment center directly in the center of the campus. Here we are. You have 5 minutes. We will be listening to the conversation. Be safe, we don't want anything happening to the baby. Nizu said to the surprise of the two. Thank you, Mitsuki said, still a bit shocked. Nizu walked into the viewing room while they walked into the room Katsuki was being held in. Finally, you old hag, get me out of here, Katsuki demanded. No, was Mitsuki's plain response to the shock of Katsuki. What did you say, you old hag? Katsuki shouted, enraged. You don't get to tell me no, I'm gonna be the #1 hero. There is no #1 hero in prison, which is where you're going for your own actions. Masaru shouted to the surprise of both Mitsuki and Katsuki. Don't you yell at me, you cowardly piece of hashtag. Katsuki shouted, even more enraged at not getting his own way. We discussed this on the way from the infirmary, we're disowning you. You are too much of a danger to have around the baby when she's born. Mitsuki said, looking down in shame and sadness. I'll end you, you hashtag. Katsuki shouted. You hear me? At this point, tears were streaming down both Mitsuki and Masaru's faces. They turned and headed for the door. Katsuki, no longer Bakugo, was screaming his head off at them, they ignored him as best they could and left. I know you may look at us as bad parents, but we've tried to tame his temper and ego. No matter what we tried, it didn't work. Mitsuki said, expecting insults from the faculty. That might have been his school's fault. Nizu said plainly. What do you mean? Masaru asked, shocked. Off the record, I might have hacked into Aldra Middle School's security camera footage, and the scene I'm about to show you is a multiple times a day, everyday occurrence. Nizu said, pulling up a video on the computer. Nizu pressed play on a scene from the recess and break area where the male teachers see Katsuki and the other boys from the school beating on Izuku till the women, both faculty and students, stepped in and stopped them. Katsuki then went over to the male teachers and popped off a couple explosions, to which they praised him and he acted like he was their god or something. With this footage being anonymously sent to the police station, there has been an investigation has been opened and they will be shut down and the male faculty arrested. Nizu explained to the shocked Bakugos. The Bakugos left the school and headed towards Inko's house where they told her what happened and what the damage was. Inko wasn't even slightly mad at them, but was furious at Katsuki. We have one question. Mitsuki said, still in shock at the fact that Inko isn't even the slightest bit mad at them. What is it? Do you need something? Inko asked, concerned. We want to know if you'd like to be the baby's godmother? Masaru asked with a gentle smile on his face. Of course. Inko cheered, full of joy. It's been a week since the incident and Izuku was finally cleared to return to class, though his back was still bothering him. When he opened the door, everybody shut up and rushed to their seats expecting it to be Aizawa. Izuku, are you sure you're healed up enough to return to class? Momo asked worriedly. Fine Momo. Izuku stuttered nervously. Izuku took his seat hearing someone talking about him. So he's the kid that you all were worried about? Shinso asked for clarification, unsure if his assumption was correct. Yeah, he took the blast to protect Yamamo and Ida. Hagakure said in a hushed whisper in the dead silent room. Izuku was distracted from listening in by Momo. Have you heard either the class news or the news about Bakugo? Momo asked. Izuku, what news? Izuku asked curiously as he hadn't heard anything about him since he's been in the infirmary. Well, you were elected class rep, but Aizawa, knowing you don't want that kind of pressure, passed it along to me, as I was voted vice rep, and you are vice rep, Momo relayed. And the case about Bakugo, he was found guilty but the transport never made it to the prison. Well, he can't evade the pros for forever. Izuku said, trying to convince himself more than Momo. Just then Aizawa waked in, gathering everyone's attention. Glad to see you're finally out of recovery girl's office. Your mom has been worried sick. Shinso, what do you mean his mom? Oh right, you haven't been introduced yet. Hitoshi Shinso, that is Izuku Aizawa, my step/adopted son. Izuku, that is Shinso, he was brought up from General Ed, to replace Bakugo. Aizawa introduced. Now since Izuku has been cleared, we can finally continue with hero training, so today we are heading to the USJ. A bunch of people started cheering. Aizawa, expecting this, was already canceling Izuku's quirk as he didn't want another fish on land situation. I didn't think that everybody would get this excited over the unforeseen simulation joint. Izuku said, surprised and a bit startled from the sudden outburst from the class. The what now? Ashido asked, very confused. Don't spoil it, but he is right, we're not going to Universal Studios Japan, we are going to a different USJ. Aizawa said numbly. You can go either in your P uniform or your hero costume. Now keep in mind that you are still not used to your costumes, or they hold bad memories for yourself or others, so they might hamper your, or others, performance. But isn't that the point, to use our costumes in training, to find out how to improve them so they won't hinder our abilities? Izuku said, confused. Stop spoiling the tests, problem child. Aizawa said, a bit upset but not letting any indication slip into his eyes or voice. Sorry, Mr. Aizawa. Izuku said, quieting down. Now head to the bus after you change. If you're not there in 5 minutes, I'm leaving without you. Aizawa ordered before leaving the room. On the bus now. Hey Aizawa? Azui said, getting everybody's attention on her, not that it really bothered her much. Which one? Izuku and Aizawa responded in sync. Sorry, Mr. Aizawa, I meant Izuku. Azui clarified. What is it, Azui? Izuku asked. Politely. Call me Tsu. Anyways, I tend to speak what's on my mind. What was / is the history between you and Bakugo? Azui asked bluntly. You don't have to tell them if you don't want to. Momo said, giving a stern look at the expectant glances from the other students. I'm gonna take a nap. You can tell them if you'd like. All of it if you'd like. Izuku said, avoiding talking about it and avoiding disappointing anybody. Izuku yawned right after he said his piece, then he shifted into a little black kitten and curled up on the seat next to Momo. I know you could have just used your imagination, but I wanted to put something cute for you. All the girls cooed and awed at how cute he was being before they turned to Momo expectantly. He said it was okay, so spill class rep. Ashido said, clearly very desperate for the drama. Fine, since it's only a matter of time till I require assistance in keeping others away from him. To sum it up, Bakugo has been attacking Izuku since they were 4, as time went on the girls of the class protected him. This only made things worse, but Izu has too big of a heart to mention this to anyone. Momo started and everybody leaned forward in anticipation. Bakugo wanted everybody to praise him like a god, so the girls siding with Izuku pissed Bakugo off big time. Bakugo gathered his friends, more like followers, and attacked him repeatedly. As the years went by, the other guys noticed how the girls surrounded Izuku, making them jealous. Even the female teachers protected him as best they could. This caused the male staff to be envious of Izuku as well, and as such they constantly did things to cause Bakugo to go after Izuku and turned a blind eye when he did. It got bad enough that the only male Izuku allows close to him is Mr. Aizawa, to my knowledge. Understood. We shall give him his space. He has already seen too much darkness in his life. Tokoyami said in a sultry tone of voice. Yeah, and his mom was unaware of what was going on with him until recently, when Bakugo was given the tools required to do some serious damage to him, in his exact words. It was the least he could do. After all, she took care of him at home, so he didn't want to worry her or cause her to lose friends. Momo said, causing confusion to spread through everybody except Aizawa. Before anyone asks, his mom and Bakugo's parents were friends since before they were born. One thing I should mention is that he gained a slight split in his personality. Manly, protecting his mom from heartbreak as best he could since age 4. Kirishima said, proud of Izuku. Though that was his intention, he may have done a bit of damage himself. Aizawa said, visibly upset at the pain this whole ordeal has caused his family. What do you mean? Azui asked, confused. I'll say this once and only because he's asleep. Aizawa said, clearly meaning that this wasn't meant for Izuku's ears. Since she found out, she feels like she's a failure as a mother, unable to notice that her child was in pain. What did you mean by a slight split in his personality, Yamamo? Hagakure asked, a bit unnerved by what her mind was coming up with. When he is not in a fight, he's the sweet yet scared boy you've seen. Yet in a fight he can be merciless if he chooses and fears almost nothing. Momo explained sadly. Alright, we're here, everybody off the bus. Yayarozu, please wake Izuku. Aizawa ordered. As everybody got off the bus, and Uraraka started fangirling over 13, Momo turned to wake Izuku only to see him in kitten form with his eyes filled with tears. Oh no, you weren't supposed to hear what he said about your mom. Momo said, covering her mouth with her hand. Izuku shifted back into human form and looked numb but got up and walked off the bus. Momo followed, unsure of how to help. While 13 was giving her speech about Quirk's safety, the lights flickered, then the portal opened. Then, true to Kirishima's fashion, he pointed out the villains amassing by the fountain. Although all of this went unnoticed by Izuku, who is still in between states of mind. Stay back, those are real villains. 13, protect the kids. Aizawa ordered, snapping into gear. Aizawa jumped down and started taking down villains left, right, and center, but failed to notice Kurojiri. Hello, my name is Kurojiri and I'm here with the League of Villains. The information we stole said All Might would be here, yet I don't see him. Was there a change of plans we could not foresee? Kurojiri asked politely. Kirishima led the two-man charge of him and Aoyama attacking Kurojiri, thus giving Ida enough time to escape and get help. Unfortunately for the others, they were split up and sent to other parts of the USJ. Izuku snapped out of his state when he hit the cold water. A shark villain was headed straight towards him when Azui appeared out of nowhere, kicking the villain while grabbing Izuku and jumping to the ship. Thank you, Asyash, Izuku started before being interrupted. Call me Tsu. Azui said sternly. I'm sorry, thank you Tsu. Izuku apologized before correcting his mistake. Honadi. Mineta screamed in fear. Why do you think they're not coming up after us? Azui asked, very confused by the lack of direct attack. They don't know our quirks. It's the only explanation. Izuku said, his personality swapping. What do you mean? Azui said, wanting clarification. Why are you here instead of the fire zone? Izuku more stated than asked. Oh, I get it. Azui said, nodding her head. I'm not gonna die a virgin. Mineta screamed. Mineta lunges towards Azui only to be met with a gorilla fist to the face, and then his face met the door to the cabin. I guess she was right about you fearing almost nothing in a fight. Azui said, finally noticing the change in Izuku. Yes and no, I just lock away as much fear as I can. I still have to deal with the fear as an after effect. Izuku explained. By the way, I have a plan to get us out of this mess. Your part is to take Mineta and jump as far as you can to get to the shore. I can make that jump. Azui said confidently. Good, now go. Izuku ordered. While Azui jumped to the shore, Izuku shifted into a lightning elemental and waited for Azui to be clear of the water before jumping in. Successfully frying all the villains at once, then flying to shore before shifting back. Izuku, glad to see you could make it. Azui said, dropping the unconscious Mineta to the ground only for Izuku to pick him up awkwardly. Izuku, carrying Mineta while walking beside Azui, was heading toward the stairs when they spotted Mr. Aizawa being overwhelmed by the sheer number of villains. Izuku, knowing he'd do more harm than good if he physically joined the fight, shifted into a necromancer and summoned about 20 skeletons to help his dad. He continued up the stairs to be met with the others who gawked at him, unsure of who he was. Hey Tsu, who's the hottie? Mina asked suggestively. Si namon rol. Azui said plainly. You mean Izuku? Momo asked, needing a bit of clarification. You need something? Izuku asked, hearing his name. Yeah, why is Mineta unconscious? Momo asked, confused. Oh, that was me. By the way, do you think you could make some rope to tie him up till the cops and other pros get here? Izuku asked politely. Momo did as requested but looked very confused. He said something about dying a virgin, whatever that is, and Tsu looked scared, then he lunged at her, so I punched him. Izuku explained, he himself a bit confused. Everybody made an oh face till they heard Aizawa scream in pain, causing all their heads to snap. To his direction. They all saw the smashed skeletons and some kind of bird monster holding a very beat-up Aizawa. Izuku, wasting no time, sprinted back down the stairs towards Aizawa, summoning a couple more skeletons. While one of the skeletons distracted the bird monster, the other grabbed Aizawa and headed up the stairs quickly. Izuku took his time by letting Shigaraki throw his tantrum. When the skeleton finally made it to the top, Izuku shifted into his werewolf form and punched the bird monster straight in the face, but it didn't seem to do anything. You fool, my Nomu has shock absorption, so that's not gonna do anything. Shigaraki said, laughing at Izuku. Izuku wasted no time shifting into his golem form so that his defensive capabilities were maxed. It's a good thing too, because as soon as he did, the Nomu unleashed a barrage of punches, creating a cloud of dust. The class along with Aizawa all screamed out for Izuku. Then a deep and gravelly voice spoke. I'm alright, guys. Izuku called out to ease his father and classmates. Not for long you won't be. Shigaraki taunted. Nomu, end him. The Nomu then unleashed barrage after barrage of punches, causing cracks to appear on Izuku's arms. Then out of nowhere an explosion sounded from up top where the other students were distracted Izuku from maintaining his defensive stance for the next barrage, causing him to be launched into the air, knocked unconscious, forcing him to shift back. He flew through the sky, landing right in All Might's arms. Izuku! Everybody shouted. All Might was worried about what happened to Izuku till he heard something. That's one student dead, now it's time for the others. Shigaraki said, celebrating. Izuku, even though he was knocked out, heard this, so while still out cold he got up and went in front of his classmates before shifting into his golem form again. Would you look at that, he's persistent. Shigaraki mocked. Wait a minute, look at him. Kurogiri said, causing Shigaraki to look more closely. Is he asleep? Shigaraki asked, very confused. I don't believe so. I think he was knocked unconscious by that last barrage as he was distracted by All Might's entrance. Kurogiri explained, he himself a bit confused. All Might then leaped down and took out the newly conscious villains before stopping in front of the Momo. Take a good look, All Might. It was created to destroy you, yet somehow that child took 20 of its barrages full force without budging. Shigaraki said, holding a tiny amount of respect for the kid still standing and guarding his friends. So it really is my fault he lost this battle? Then I'll make it up to him by dedicating this victory to him. All Might said, a bit upset with himself. AM and the Nomu unleashed barrage after barrage upon each other, neither giving up any ground to the other. AM then decided he wasn't going to win with just 100%. You may have heard these words before, but today you learn the true meaning. All Might said, still punching. A hero will always find a way to break out of a tough spot, so today I go plus you'll the. With that, the Nomu was sent straight out of the USJ and into the forest surrounding it. Master lied, you're not weakened, if anything you're stronger than before. Shigaraki said, throwing another tantrum. Kurogiri, get us out of here. Yes, sir. Kurogiri said robotically. Just after they left, the rest of the pros arrived and looked upon a strange scene. There at the start of the steps was the whole class hiding behind a statue. Izu, we're safe, you can rest easy now. Momo said softly but loud enough for everybody to hear. After Momo told him they were safe, he shifted back while falling backwards, landing directly in Momo's arms. All right, go round up the remaining villains while the police handle the unconscious ones. Nizu ordered the heroes. Sir, all the villains are unconscious. Also, officers, please don't forget to take this one. Momo said while pointing at the tied-up Mineta. Why would they need to take a student? Nizu asked, confused. He lunged at Tsu with every intent to rape her because he didn't want to die a virgin. Ashido explained, disgusted. In that case, officers, please take him away with the other villains. Nizu said, also disgusted but upset as well since this will be the second strike and within a couple weeks of the first one as well. Izuku just woke up in Recovery Girl's office groaning, alerting her of his consciousness. Easy there, boy, you had some nasty bruising on you, let me make sure you're all healed. Recovery Girl warned. Izuku complied with Recovery Girl as she did the checkup before she gave him the all clear. By the way, be a dear and wake her up before you go, would you? Recovery Girl said, pointing to the girl sitting in the chair beside the bed, head laying on it sleeping. Of course, ma'am. Izuku says politely. Thank you for treating me. Such manners. Recovery Girl comments. You're very welcome. Momo, it's time to wake up. Izuku says, gently shaking her shoulder. Momo groaned and sat up, rubbing her eyes. What time is it, Izu? Izu. Momo shouts. Ow, that was my ear, and I don't know, I just woke up. Izuku answered, rubbing his ear gently to ease the ringing. How long have I been out? Just a few hours. Momo said, settling herself down. Thank God. Wait, is everybody okay? Izuku asked, slightly panicked. Yeah, you and Mr. Aizawa were the only injuries, though the only injuries he suffered was a broken arm and some bruising. Momo answered. Thank God, the last thing I remember is getting distracted and failing. Izuku says sadly. Momo then slapped him upside the head quite hard. You didn't fail, you were willing to die to save us. Momo shouted angrily. Even unconscious, you got back up and shifted back into that golem and stood in front of us. Izuku was starting to shake a bit. So don't you ever say you failed or you'll get worse than a slap to the head. Izuku was shaking in fear and crying because of both the slap and yelling. Yes, mum, sorry mum. Izuku said instinctively. Oh Izu, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to get so aggressive. Momo said, coming back to her senses. I just meant that you didn't fail even after you got hurt. Come here. Momo then pulled Izuku into a hug to reassure him that she wasn't gonna hurt him. Thank you. Izuku said quietly. What for? Momo asked, very confused. Both. Izuku answered vaguely. Anytime for the hug. Momo said, still hugging Izuku. I don't want to have to keep telling you that you didn't fail. All right, you two lovebirds, get out of here. Recovery Girl said, startling them and causing them to jump apart. Sorry ma'am, but we're just friends. Momo said, hoping Izuku didn't feel that way about her. Oh, my apologies. Recovery girl said politely. But still, you both got families to get back to, so get going. Yes, ma'am. Momo said, already getting up and pulling Izuku with her. With that, Momo and Izuku both took their leave, heading their separate ways after exiting the school. When Izuku arrived home, it was much quieter than it should have been, which set him on alert. Mom, are you home? Izuku asked cautiously. Yes, sweetie, I'm just in the living room watching TV. Are you okay? I saw what happened at the USJ. Inko said, sounding very out of character. If she'd seen it, she would rush him unless something was stopping her. Izuku walked into the living room to talk with his mom. But as soon as he entered, he was pinned to the ground by a big muscular blonde man, not Bakugo. You said you wouldn't hurt him if I complied. Inko said, worriedly, looking between Shigaraki and Izuku. He isn't hurt yet. Shigaraki says with an implied threat. Now, Izuku, was it? You're a real pain for me, so I'm gonna remove you from the game. I know it's cheating, but so is having 2 final bosses instead of 1, so I thought I'd do the game a favor and remove the bug. But first, let's have some fun. With that, Shigaraki started slowly decaying Inko while the man holding Izuku forced him to watch. Izuku kept struggling to get free, to help her, to no avail. Something in Izuku snapped and he shifted into his werewolf form and sent the villains fleeing. But it was too late, her injuries were too severe, even Recovery Girl wouldn't be able to save her. Izuku shifted back to human form, running to his mother's side. I love you, Izuku. I'm sorry I failed you as a mother. Inko said, already knowing she can't be saved. You didn't fail, you were the best mom I could ever ask for. Izuku said, causing Inko to smile. I'm sorry I failed you as a son, I should have been able to protect you, but I failed. Shigaraki and Kurogiri came back while he was distracted, and Shigaraki drove a knife into Izuku's back. At that exact moment in time, Aizawa got home after finishing paperwork with one arm. Izuku! Inko! Aizawa shouted desperately. Izuku passed out to blood loss and grief. Aizawa picked him up, spotting the dying Inko beside him. It's too late to save me, so please save our boy. Inko begged. I will, and I swear I'll protect him to the best of my ability. Aizawa said quietly. I know, yo dash. Inko started, but death caught her before she could finish. Aizawa, while crying, ran Izuku back to Recovery Girl's office before heading to Nizu's office. I'm gonna end him. Aizawa said upon entering without knocking. Didn't you forget something? Nizu said, angry at the lack of manners and respect. And who are you gonna end exactly? No, I did not. And I'm gonna end Shigaraki. Aizawa ranted angrily. What did he do? Nizu asked, concerned. He ended Inko and possibly Izuku too. Aizawa said, anger clear in his voice. What do you mean possibly? Nizu asked, a bit confused. I mean, he might not survive the knife that was jammed into his back. Aizawa ranted, pacing back and forth. In that case, you have my permission to end Shigaraki at the earliest convenience without worrying about the consequences. Nizu said, feeling an urge for vengeance. Thank you, sorry for not knocking. Aizawa said, calming down, knowing he had permission to get revenge. No matter, this is much more important than manners. Nizu said wistfully. Aizawa then went into his office and away from any prying eyes before starting to bawl his eyes out for the woman he had loved for a decade. Izuku just woke up and was fully healed, so he looked at the clock before spotting a note on top of his uniform. To my nephew. You've been out for a day, but in that day we got everybody moved into dorms along with your stuff. Your room is the only one on the bottom floor, and you missed the announcement for the sports festival. You do not have to participate if you do not feel up to it. The beginning speech was passed to Momo, as we know you won't be able to talk in front of everybody. We're all wishing you a speedy recovery, and please, for everybody's sake, stop getting injured. Uncle Nizu. P.S. To get to the dorms, follow the pathway to the left, and it should be the first one you come across. This brought a smile to Izuku's face, yet he couldn't help but feel that something was different with his mind, but he shrugged that off to deal with it later. He instead opted to get dressed and head over to the new dorms, where he was met with a barrage of questions, causing him to freeze in panic. Everybody back away and stop shouting at him. Yaoyorozu ordered loudly. Everybody did as she ordered as she went forward and calmed him down. How are you feeling? Yaoyorozu asked gently and worriedly. For the most part, just really numb, like it hasn't really been processed. Izuku answered honestly, despite his want to assure everybody he was fine since he knew lying to Yaoyorozu was not a good option. You know what I mean? Your room is right down that hall, go get some sleep. Yaoyorozu said, pointing him towards a door at the end of the hall on the first floor. Izuku shifted into a baby unicorn and trotted down to his room and entered through the doggy door at the bottom installed by Nizu for this exact reason. His room is half stable half room so that he may sleep in either form. The rest of the students were left stunned by what just occurred. 1 minute he's completely frozen and the next he's shifting into the most adorable thing they've ever seen before disappearing down the hallway. Momo. Before you ask, he actually lives in that form, so if you see what looks like a horse roaming around, do not approach it. It's more than likely Izuku. Is everything about him adorable? Ashido asked while barely restraining herself from squealing. Yes, and if any of you attempt to ruin his innocence, they will die. Yaoyorozu said with a dark aura about her. Momo alert. Hagakure joked. This got laughs out of most of the class. Well, I personally think Momo going into mama mode is incredibly SXY. Jiro unintentionally said out loud. This caused both girls to turn red and faint, with Izuku catching them while in werewolf form as he came out for something to eat in time to see them faint. He gently laid them on the couch before shifting back into himself. What happened? Izuku asked, very concerned. The look of pure concern on his face showed the others how much he truly cared for them. They just fainted, they'll wake up shortly. Ashido answered softly, in awe of how much worry was in his eyes. Izuku nodded and turned back to them and waited for them to wake up, not caring that everybody was staring at him. Momo was the first to awaken, so he checked on her to make sure she was alright before going back to wait for Jiro to wake up, which she did shortly after, receiving the same checkup as Momo before his stomach made itself known quite loudly. How long has it been since you've eaten? Yaoyorozu asked worriedly. Lunch before going home that day. Izuku answered nervously. So you're telling me you've missed 6 meals and you decided to wait for us to wake up rather than getting something to eat? Yaoyorozu said calmly. Momo may have spoke calmly, but it was like the sea, a calm surface but the riptide just below waiting for a victim to breach the surface. This was enough to set everybody but Jiro backpedaling immediately. Jiro was lost in lust. I was on my way to get something to eat when I saw you both faint. I couldn't let you guys get hurt just so I could get food, you're more important. Izuku explained, getting more nervous by the second. Momo chose not to respond but to instead grab Izuku's arm and drag him to the kitchen, where she went about preparing a simple yet filling meal for him. When she was finished, he divvied it up into 3 portions, confusing Momo. Momo, why are there 3 plates? Izuku simply pointed to the doorway where Jiro was attempting to hide, and Momo barely spotted her thanks to her being pointed out. When she turned back, she spotted the feline ears on his head. You might as well come out, Jiro, he already knows you're there and served you up a portion of the food as well. Yaoyorozu called out to her. Jiro slumped her shoulders and came out of her hiding spot. And I thought I was hidden so well. Jiro said, pouting. You were. If it wasn't for my ability to partially shift, I wouldn't have known you were there without outing the fact I knew. Izuku said reassuringly. This praise raised Jiro's spirits and confidence to a new height, and when she went to thank him, he was nowhere to be found. Where did he go, and how did he leave without me hearing? Jiro asked, her curiosity piqued. I don't know how he does that either. Yaoyorozu answered honestly. Yaoyorozu, I wanted to ask you something, and please don't interrupt me. I've had a small crush on you since I first saw you, and it grew exponentially that day at the USJ where you risked yourself to protect me. Jiro said quickly but slow enough to be understood. Jiro kept her head lowered in fear of rejection, but that was washed away when Momo gently grabbed her chin and lifted her head to look her in the eyes. Momo then leaned forward and kissed Jiro right on the lips. They were interrupted by cheers that startled them. They looked around and spotted their classmates all in the doorway, more than likely stuck locking the new couple in the kitchen unintentionally. Izuku, we need some help. Yaoyorozu called out. Izuku, upon hearing this, came out in baby unicorn form and spotted the issue. Rather than causing pain by trying to pull everybody out of the doorway, he shifted into werewolf form and grabbed the two sides of the doorway and ripped a chunk out of each side, making a wider doorway, thus freeing everybody, and left back to what he was doing before, which was holding his werewolf form for as long as he could while writing in his notebook to practice his strength control to prevent possible injuries if he were to have to grab hold of a civilian or villain while in this form. While doing this, he didn't realize his door was opened and Momo came in and donned a look of confusion. "What are you doing?" Yaoyorozu asked curiously. Izuku spoke in a rough voice. "I'm practicing strength control while also extending my stamina reserves. I'm gonna be heading to bed soon, good night." Izuku explained. "Alright, good night Izuku," Yaoyorozu said gently. Momo then turned and left while Izuku was finishing up with his notebook page before he shifted back and went to bed, but not before crying when he knew nobody should come in, as that's how it would have been if Momo hadn't asked Jiro to keep an ear out for Izuku in case something was wrong. "Momo, he's crying, should we go to him or let him cry alone?" Jiro asked, unsure of what to do. Oh, it looks like mommy mode is contagious. Now Jiro has it too." Ashido teased, but neither of the parties either heard or they didn't care. "We go to him cause nobody should have to cry alone," Yaoyorozu said firmly. Jiro and Momo got up from where they were snuggling on one of the couches in the common room watching TV and headed to Izuku's room, where they pulled him into a hug where he continued to cry before he passed out in their arms, and then they too passed out. Time skip. Over the 2 weeks they had off to train for the sports festival, both Momo and Jiro noticed how Aizawa wouldn't even look at Izuku and how that hurt Izuku just as much as losing Inko did. It was like he lost 2 parents instead of 1. So to help him, they both adopted parental roles for him. Izuku trained by doing stamina training while holding his werewolf form. It successfully made him have enough stamina to be able to fight in that form for 5 hours without breaking a sweat. He also continued to practice with his scarf and martial arts, coming much closer to mastering them. He was completely ready for the sports festival. We see Class 1A in their waiting room waiting to be called out to the arena. First up, we have the class that survived a villain attack. "Class 1A, everybody," Present Mike announced. They started walking out and were met with screaming, but Izuku expected it, so it didn't really scare him, it just raised his heart rate quite a bit. "Now we have classes 1B through H, can we get some applause everybody?" Present Mike announced with noticeably less enthusiasm. The other classes arrived, but they got noticeably less applause, so Izuku risked gaining some attention on himself and also applauded with the audience. The others noticed this and all followed along. This received smiles from all but one person, who sneered and lifted his head but didn't say anything. "Now can we have Yaoyorozu Momo come up on stage and give a speech, please?" Midnight announced. Momo walked up looking a bit surprised, but she reined it in and put on a smile and bowed to Midnight. "I wasn't expecting this, so I'll just say what comes to mind. Me and my classmates wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Aizawa Izuku. He took on the villains alone after our teachers fell to a villain that even All Might had trouble with." Yaoyorozu started by explaining the events nobody is certain of. This shows that the villains are getting stronger, which means we also have to get stronger so that we can keep people safe. So today we go above and beyond to show the world how hard we are working to be ready to keep them safe. This was met with cheers from the audience. "Today we go plus ultra." The audience and students along with the staff all cheered with her at the end. She hopped off the stage and regrouped with her class. "The first round is the obstacle race," Midnight announced with cracking her whip for emphasis. After Midnight announced the first round, everybody gathered at the starting line for the race. "Computer, 3, go." Everybody took off trying to crowd through the narrow tunnel while Izuku shifted into his werewolf form and leaped clear over the arena to get on the other side before shifting into a cheetah and taking off at high speeds. There he goes, folks. Aizawa Izuku is in the lead by a great amount. He has reached the first obstacle. Present Mike commentated. Izuku spotted the robots and was zipping in between them until he saw the 0-pointers from the entrance exam. He immediately shifted into the same giant cyclops he did the first time he saw one, but this time he simply shoved them out of his way, knowing that once he passed them they'd target the other participants. They did exactly as predicted, and he shifted back into the cheetah. Would you look at that? What a power play! In one move he has more than doubled the ever-increasing gap between him and second place. He's reached the second obstacle, the chasm. Present Mike announced with excitement reverberating in every word. Izuku spotted the pit from when he was the giant Cyclops, so he was prepared for it. He kept running and leaped. In mid-leap he shifted from cheetah form to Unipeg, taking off into the sky. "What are you teaching your students, Eraserhead?" Present Mike shouted in excitement. "This one I only taught martial arts and how to use my capture scarf. This is all them. They've faced real villains, something most third years can't even say." Aizawa said emotionlessly. "Did you hear that, folks? Eraser here is a terrible teacher in all but combat." "Oh, I'm sorry." Present Mike screamed in fear. All the audience could hear after that were strangled screams and pleas from the loud announcer. They saw the Unipeg soar out of the tunnel and up to the announcer's box, where he pulled the feral Aizawa off of Present Mike and stuffed him into his sleeping bag, and using Aizawa's own scarf to tie the bag shut before leaving and shifting back into a Unipeg and flying back down to the ground just in time for second place to arrive. And in second place we have Shoto Todoroki. "Thank you, Izuku, for saving my life," Present Mike said, not missing a beat after. Getting back to the mic. Izuku, now in Baby Unicorn, nodded his head before heading to the grassy area around the edge of the arena and laying down and taking a nap to restore his stamina from the multitude of transformations he did. Izuku was gently awoken by Momo, letting him know that round 2 was about to begin. "Izuku, will you team with us?" Yaoyorozu asked, approaching him. "Of course." Izuku answered without hesitation. Momo, Jiro, and Tsu had spotted the quiet freakout Izuku was having after being informed of the 10 million points and the target on his back. They decided to spare him the freakout by approaching him. "Momo, if you can create undercarriage that can be attached to me while I'm in Unipeg form, I can fly us around the entire round, while Jiro can defend the carriage from attacks and Tsu can snag others' headbands when we're over top of them," Izuku explained. "That was fast, let's do this," Jiro said, getting pumped up. They fist-bumped before setting to work. In the end it was like a hot air balloon basket but tied to a Unipeg. They hopped in while Izuku prepared to take off. "Computer, 3, go." And like that, Team Yaoyorozu was airborne. The first team they stole the headband from was Team Monoma, who spent the remainder of the round chasing the flying group with nobody in his team, with a ranged Quirk effectively eliminating them. Then came Team Ibra, who was too in awe of the Unipeg to do anything to defend themselves. They went on and stole a different team's headband, allowing them into the final round even if they lost the 10 million point headband. In the end they had more than enough points to move on to the final round. And time's up. You have an hour break for the contestants to regain some energy before the battle-style tournament, Present Mike announced before quickly vacating the announcer's box. With that, Izuku set the basket down gently before landing beside it and flopping while shifting back into his regular form, exhausted. "Izuku!" Yaoyorozu and Jiro screamed in worry. "You guys did really good, but I need to go eat something and take a nap," Izuku said, too tired to really say more than that. Izuku said that while getting to his feet sluggishly and wobbly. He headed off down to the cafeteria, where he was met with his Aunt Mitsuki and Uncle Masaru waiting for him. They saw his sluggish movements and were about to get up to help him until he smiled and waved them off. He went and got some food and went and sat with them. "Hi, Auntie Mitsuki, Uncle Masaru, and little one," Izuku greeted cheerily despite how tired he is. "Hi, Izuku, as you can see, little Katsumi's here to see you as well," Mitsuki said happily. "You're doing quite well so far, we're proud of you, and we're sure Inko is as well," Masaru said encouragingly. "She may be proud, but I'm ashamed of myself," Izuku responded self-deprecatingly. "This is just making it so much worse. I have all this power, yet I didn't save her, I froze, and because of that she's dead." As Izuku was talking, tears started forming in his eyes, showing how much pain he is still in. Mitsuki brought him into a hug, and while in the hug Katsumi reached out and grabbed his pinky, making him smile through the tears. "Hello, Katsumi. When you grow up you're gonna be a great hero with an even greater heart," Izuku said gently, and Katsumi started to laugh in excitement, not truly knowing what was said but happy because she helped Izuku at least slightly. It's time for the final event and Izuku is up first. His opponent is Hitoshi Shinso, He's walking to the arena at the same time as the boy with purple hair that is his newest classmate. Ready? Fight! Midnight announced. You have an amazing quirk. Shinso said tauntingly. You'll easily make it in the hero society. The quirk doesn't make the hero, the heart makes the hero. Izuku said not just to him but everybody, so his quirk wouldn't work on me just yet at least. Do you truly believe that? Shinso asked in shock. Izuku went to answer, thinking he was too in shock to use his quirk. Shinso used his quirk on Izuku, effectively putting him to sleep and awakening someone else. You've screwed up now. The mystery person said threateningly. Huh, why aren't you under my control? Shinso questioned himself, shocked once again. You should be awoken me. The mystery person in Izuku's body taunted. By the way, the name Zook, I'm his split personality caused by seeing his mother tortured to death while he was pinned down. Zook explained emotionlessly. Now you have a choice. You can use your quirk on me and awaken Izuku and fight him, or you can fight me. Your only other option is to forfeit, seeing as you've never trained your body a day in your life. I'll fight because a hero never gives up no matter the odds. Shinso responded determinedly. Good choice, now let's fight. Zook said excitedly. Shinso charged in fast, hoping to get the jump on Zook, though that might not be possible. Zook grabbed his wrist and spun him, making him land in the middle of the arena. Lesson 1. Never charge your opponent blindly and without caution. Zook said out of the blue, confusing Shinso. Lesson 2. Never lower your guard while your enemy is conscious. Shinso was rewarded with a kick to his ribs for doing so. Lesson 3. Pick your battles wisely, you never know what battle might be your last. With that, Zook slipped through Shinso's guard and gave a swift chop to the neck, knocking him out. And the winner is Izuku. Present Mike screamed in excitement. Izuku, unsure of anything that happened, walked out in a daze. When he arrived at the stands, everybody noticed that he was still in a daze. Izuku, are you okay? Yaoyorozu asked, concerned. Yes. No, I don't know, I don't remember the match, it's like I was asleep. Izuku answered honestly. We'll get that checked out after the sports festival is over. As for the match, all you did was give him a lesson on how to fight before knocking him out. Yaoyorozu explained to a grateful Izuku. Essentially, you just showed the world you don't need a quirk to be a hero by beating Shinso without using your quirk. Jiro boiled it down while adding another layer to it. That's good, right? Izuku asked, unsure. I think so. Yaoyorozu answered thoughtfully. I'm gonna take a nap, good night. Izuku said, yawning and sitting in his seat. Izuku fell asleep, so Momo pulled his head over onto her lap while Jiro put his legs across her lap. About 20 minutes later, it was time for Momo and Jiro's match, girlfriend against girlfriend. In the end, Momo came out on top, and it was time for Izuku's match against Todoroki. Ready? Fight! Midnight announced. Todoroki started the match, trying to end it like he did with Siro, but luck was not in his favor. Izuku shifted into an ice elemental and phased right through the ice while controlling it so it didn't even get close to the audience. Izuku then spoke in a voice that reminisced with the wind rolling over hills of snow. That's not gonna work on me. Izuku warned. Todoroki ignored Izuku and kept trying, but was getting slower and slower, and you could see the frostbite creeping over his skin. Eventually he couldn't move any longer. The audience was in awe of Izuku. He protected them from both the ice and the cold without sustaining any damage himself. The match is over, Izuku wins, somebody hurry get him to Recovery Girl. Midnight shouted worriedly. No need, besides, despite her incredible ability she wouldn't be able to help him. Izuku said, confusing and scaring everyone at the prospect of a kid dying in the sports festival. Izuku the shifted forms again, but this time into a flaming bird known as a phoenix. Izuku the flew down to Todoroki and shed a single tear onto him, healing him of his frostbite and his burn scar. Rei, who was watching from her room in the hospital, watched the scar she put on her baby vanish with tears of joy. The audience was in shock at just how powerful this boy is. The medical bots came and collected Todoroki before Izuku left for the stadium, even if only for a brief intermission before his match against Momo. Ready? Fight! Midnight announced. I won't fight you, Momo. I couldn't bear it if I ever brought you pain. Izuku said, tearing up at just the thought of that happening. And if you actually did fight me, I wouldn't stand a chance, I forfeit. Yaoyorozu said before Izuku could forfeit. Yaoyorozu Momo has forfeited the match. Izuku Aizawa is the winner of this year's festival, and he did so indisputably. Midnight shouted excitedly. He was first place in all events. Folks, we have ourselves somebody who has done something not even All Might could do, and he did it as a first year. The audience cheered so loudly that Bakugo heard it from where he was hiding from the cops that are looking for him. Shigaraki was furious seeing that the one kid he actually really wanted dead survived and seemed to be even stronger than before. We see Izuku in Nizu's office along with All Might, Eraserhead, and Shinso. We reviewed the footage of your match with Shinso here and found something strange. It appears that you have a split personality and we would like to talk to him. Nizu said seriously. Izuku then nodded his head after having an internal conversation with Zook. Hello again, Shinso. Nice to meet you, Nizu and All Might. My name is Zook, and as I've explained to Shinso, I'm a split personality from Izuku due to all the trauma he's received throughout his life. Zook introduced himself. You can relax your Quirk, Aizawa. I'm not like a villain personality. I'm totally different, though I do have to say I did act slightly like a villain during our match, Shinso, and for that I apologize, but I needed a meeting with Nizu. It's alright, thank you for the short lesson on fighting. Shinso said, slightly uncomfortable. No problem. Anyway, as I've said, I was created when Izuku watched our mother be murdered. I'm him, but with less fear and a lot more confidence. Zook explained. I'll only come out as a last resort, or when he feels like going to sleep during class. Zook joked and caused All Might to burst out laughing. Anyway, don't we have a new student to introduce into class before we talk about hero names and internships? You do, though I would like for you to stay for about a minute after everyone else leaves. Nizu said, and Zook nodded. After Aizawa and Shinso left, All Might went poof into Small Might and went into his explanation. I would also like to apologize for scaring you, young Aizawa, before battle training. All Might said as he rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. It's fine, I could heal your injury if you'd like me to? Izuku offered. Are you certain? Everyone with a medical-based quirk has tried and nothing has worked. Nizu asked, hopeful yet doubtful at the same time. I'm certain, after all I healed Todoroki, he doesn't even have his scar that he got 11 years ago. Izuku said proudly. Thank you, Zook. All Might said with joy and hope in his voice. Not that there's a difference, but it's Izuku, not Zook. Izuku said with a nervous yet genuine smile. Izuku then shifted back into the phoenix again while All Might lay down and lifted his shirt just high enough to see the scar. Izuku landed beside All Might and leaned over his scar before shedding a single tear. Before their eyes, All Might's scar disappeared and he went into his buff form automatically without activating OFA. He was back at his peak for his age, so while not in his prime, he's a lot stronger than he was before. The next thing anybody heard was the loud rumble of All Might's stomach. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get to class. Izuku said before getting back up. Wait, young Aizawa, I would like for you to be my successor. All Might said out of the blue. If you choose to do so, eat this hair, because you need to consume some of my DNA for the transfer to work. Izuku nodded his head and accepted the hair before heading off to class. When he arrived, he sat in his seat just before Aizawa woke up. Today we have a few things to discuss. First off, we have a transfer student from 1B joining our class from now on, Itsuka Kendo? Aizawa said plainly. Second is that something new has happened to Aizawa. This got worried shouts from everybody while Jiro and Momo went straight to Izuku to make sure he was okay. Due to certain events, he has developed a split personality, and we've already spoken with the split, and in their own words they are just like Aizawa, just without the fear, and has a lot more confidence. Aizawa said before brushing that aside. Next up is hero names, and since I'm terrible with those, I've brought in help. That would be me. I have final approval for your hero names, so make them good or they'll be hell to pay. Midnight threatened. As class went on and hero names were approved or people were sent back to the drawing board. When it was his turn, you could see his nerves before he went into battle mode, as he calls it. I'm the shape-shifting hero, Myth. Izuku announced proudly but a touch nervous. That got a round of applause and an approval, and he went back to his seat. I've chosen the name Mediator for my hero name and I'll let the people decide my title. Shinso said before heading back to his seat. Risky gamble, I like it. Midnight said breathily. Now, if everyone would look at the board, these are the offers you've received from pro heroes all around the country. Aizawa explained. Pick from your stack, and if you didn't get any offers, take a look at this list of 40 and pick one. Izuku rummaged through his list before he found a hero that called to him, Kapi Nin, otherwise known as Kakashi Hatake. Izuku knows that the hero is male, but he also knows that to be an effective hero he needs to overcome his fears. He needs more stealth and martial arts training so that in a worst-case scenario he isn't useless in any situation. He hands in his form and doesn't even receive a grunt of acknowledgement like Aizawa did for the other students. This was noticed by Midnight, who also noticed the hurt look on Izuku's face before he hid it behind a fake smile. This fake smile was perceived by Midnight, Momo, and Jiro, but they couldn't do anything about it right now. The rest of the students all handed in their forms, all getting a noise of acknowledgement from Aizawa. Izuku is learning to act accordingly. If Aizawa isn't going to acknowledge his presence, then he was going to only look to him as a teacher and not a father anymore, even though it hurt to do so. The students then left for the dorms with the 2 transfers in tow. As soon as they got there, Izuku shifted into the baby unicorn like he usually does and cantered to his room. This garnered reactions from the transfers. Shinso was slightly shocked while Kendo was in awe of how adorable it was. Idas tried to stop that but gave up when he realized that is how Aizawa lives. Kaminari explained for them. He's rarely in human form in the dorms. He's talking to himself, which means he's in human form. Jiro said while eavesdropping, meaning that he's contemplating something. What's he saying? Momo asked a bit worried. Give me a second. Jiro answered. Jiro then hooked her ear jack into a speaker and the other into the wall, broadcasting what Izuku was saying to the others. What did I do that caused him to no longer care? Is it because I'm too weak? Izuku questioned himself. That's probably it. I'm just a weak failure like Bakugo always said. Bakugo, isn't that the dude that was taken out of UA with cuffs on for attacking a student, and it was later found out that he had constantly been attacking someone since preschool? Shinso questioned, slightly alarmed. Yeah, meet his victim, you name it, he did it trying to break Izuku. Yayorozu answered. Izuku, are you two dating or something? Shinso asked, surprised. No, we've known each other since we were kids when he saved me from Bakugo before I had to move away. Yayorozu explained. He then later on, about 10 months before the entrance exam when I moved back, saved me from the sludge villain incident, and I'm dating Kyoka. While Momo was busy explaining a few things, Jiro went ahead to Izuku's room and knocked on the door. He opened it and let her in. Is that common? Izuku asked curiously. What? Jiro asked confused. Me being the topic of discussion. Izuku clarified. Yes and no, for instance after the USJ, yes, after battle training, yes, in other words only after you do something people want to talk about. Jiro said, which pretty much meant yes all around. In this case it was us explaining a few things about you. Oh, did you want something? Izuku asked as politely as he could. Yeah, you are not weak or a failure and we're all living proof of that. Jiro answered. We wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for you, and neither would Mr. Aizawa or 13 for that matter. Thank you, you might want to get out there and save your girlfriend from being grilled by the others about me. Izuku said, surprising her. How did you dash? Izuku cut her off by pointing to his head where there was a pair of feline ears. All right then, I'm gonna go save her. Jiro made an awkward exit before getting to her girlfriend. Thank you, Jiro. Momo said after Jiro got the crowd to leave her alone. I'd do anything for you, you should know that by now. Jiro said, hugging her. Momo and Jiro headed to the couch where they proceeded to snuggle and watch TV with the rest of their classmates. Izuku decided to accept OFA with the reasoning that if he ever found someone better for it he'd pass it along. The previous users of OFA agreed that even if he passed the Quirk along they'd leave a small piece with him. They were also having a grand old time with Zook. They are at the train station waiting to head to their destinations. What hero did you pick, Izuku? Yayorozu asked curiously. Piquet Kopinin. Izuku answered, a slight hint of nervousness in his voice that went unnoticed. I've never heard of him, Yaoyorozu said thoughtfully, trying to recall if she's ever heard of that hero or not. He's an underground hero like Eraserhead. He is specially skilled in martial arts and stealth, so far advanced that known masters don't stand a chance against him even when he sticks to one form or style. Izuku explained in awe, slightly fanboying. You said he? Yaoyorozu asked worriedly. Yes, I've decided to multitask during the internship. Izuku explained. While I improve my stealth and fighting skills, I will also be working on overcoming my fear. Smart, although you could do that here as well. Yaoyorozu suggested. I could, but I'd rather not use my classmates like that. I want them to trust me and not think I have an ulterior motive. Izuku said with a bright smile as he spotted the train arriving. The train is here, so it's time to go. See you all next week. Everybody was surprised at him speaking up, and to everybody except Kendo and Shinso, who hadn't realized that he never talked louder than an inside voice and never talked to the guys even when addressing the whole group. Why do you guys look so surprised? Shinso questioned, confused. Izuku has never said anything to us guys, ever. Kirishima said, still in shock. He's spoken to me before. Shinso said plainly. Was that Izuku or Zook? Yaoyorozu asked bluntly. It was more than likely Zook. Shinso admitted. There's your answer. Now we'd better get on our trains before they leave without us. Jiro said while snagging Yaoyorozu's arm and hopping onto their train. Everybody scrambled to their trains before they could leave and headed to their internships. Izuku arrived at the copy nin's home nearly 20 minutes later, about 5 minutes before he was scheduled to. He spent said 5 minutes psyching himself up before knocking on the door. The copy nin opened the door, seeing as how he's been aware of Izuku's arrival since he got there. He has also been informed of Izuku's situation by Nizu, including his fear of the male gender and the split personality. He can see the fear in Izuku's eyes, but it's not on his face, so he knows Izuku is reining it in. Good, you know how to control your emotions, Kakashi said, moving aside to let Izuku in. Now I know what I think you need, but the question is, what do you think you need? I need to work on my martial arts skills and stealth. My control of my quirk is something I've been working on since I was 4. Izuku answered honestly. With your quirk, why do you wish to learn martial arts and stealth? Kakashi questioned curiously. So that I can be helpful no matter the situation and can get the best outcome possible every time. I know that I can't always rely on my quirk to solve the situation. Izuku answered honestly. Smart, follow me to the training room so that we can get started. Kakashi instructed, already leading the way. That's what Izuku did over the week. He worked on all 4. He trained in multiple fighting styles and stealth. He slowly started overcoming his fear. He also was able to communicate with any of the past users of OFA so long as they wished to communicate with him, so Nana Shimura has been training him with that as well. The first thing she taught him was how to spread it out throughout his body and lowering the percentage. The next thing was keeping the lightning inside so that he could say that he was just shifting his muscles to get the extra boost in speed and strength. It's now the last day of the internship, and Izuku and Copy Nin are heading over to Hosu to do a patrol on the rooftop, seeing as how Copy Nin is an underground hero that works from the shadows. His quirk is not the strongest when not utilized properly. It simply allows him to copy someone's fighting style by watching them. It also increases his reaction speed and everything else. His quirk is called Sharingan, but it only takes up one eye that he keeps covered. As they were patrolling, Copy Nin on the rooftops and Myth as an eagle in the sky, Myth cawed twice, a signal for danger, putting Copy Nin on alert where he spotted the flying Nomu. Myth had talked about the USJ incident and how strong the Nomu was even without its quirk. He also mentioned that the weakness was the brain. Copy Nin immediately threw a kunai straight into the brain of the flying Nomu, ending it. Myth then landed on the roof with the Copy Nin. I also spotted Tenya heading into an alley towards the hero Ender. Myth explained dutifully. Tenya is Ida's official hero name, so it's not being disrespectful to call him that. Then let's go. Can you shift into that black unipeg and fly us there quickly? Copy Nin instructed. Myth nodded his head mid-transformation, and Copy Nin hopped onto his back, and Myth took off at his fastest speed, going much faster than Hawks. They arrived in time to see Tenya about to be ended, so Myth simply dive-bombed right into Stain out of nowhere, knocking him away from Tenya. Copy Neen hopped off while Myth went over to Native. Copy Neen was evenly matched against Stain until Stain started targeting Tenya and Native, but that was quickly turned around when Myth started protecting them. Myth, I give you permission to use whatever means necessary to take Stain down. I'll protect Tenya and Native. Copy Neen instructed. Understood. Myth responded quickly. Myth and Copy Neen quickly swapped spots, with Myth powering up OFA to 30%, outmatching Stain in both speed and power, quickly taking him down without sustaining injury, and without injuring Stain too much to need a hospital. Good job, Myth. Copy Neen said, a touch surprised. He was mine to take down for what he did to my brother. Tenya screamed at Myth from the ground. What did he do? Myth asked worriedly. You're Ingenium's little brother, aren't you? Copy Neen asked, already knowing the answer. Ingenium was attacked and left paralyzed from the waist down during the sports festival. Why didn't you say anything? I could have healed him if given permission to use my quirk. Myth said, already planning to get permission from Nizu or any other hero he could. Tenya stopped to reconsider his actions and realized that there was an option to help his brother almost literally right in front of him at the time. In that case, while I take Stain to the police station, you take them to Hosu General. Copy Neen instructed. I give you permission to use your quirk to both take them to the hospital and heal Ingenium. Understood. Myth responded. Copy Neen picked up Stain, taking away the knives he had in his sleeve and all the other knives on him, while Myth transformed into Griffin and grabbed them both, one in each taloned foot, and flew towards Hosu General. When he arrived, he cawed loudly, getting a couple attendants' attention, getting them to get a couple gurneys out for Tenya and Native. Native informed them that Izuku was given permission to bring them here and to heal Ingenium, so they lead Izuku to Ingenium's room and informed him of what was going to happen if he wanted Izuku to. If you think you can heal me, then please try. Ingenium asked, nearly begging. I need you to roll over onto your back and lift your shirt so I have access to the wound and easier access to your spine. Myth instructed. Tensei Ida did as requested before nodding to Myth. Myth then proceeded to transform into his phoenix form before flying over and landing on the railing of the bed, and leaned over and shed a single tear onto Ida's back. After about a minute, they could see his foot twitch, signaling that he was healing. Myth shifted back and bowed to Ida before leaving the room, and the hospital headed for the train, shooting Copy Neen a text asking whether or not to head to his place or back to the dorms. Back in time with Copy Neen / Kakashi Hatake. Copy Neen just entered the police precinct with the now conscious and furious Stain over his shoulder. The police immediately put quirk-canceling cuffs on Stain and asked for Copy Neen's hero license, to which he obliged. Thank you for capturing Stain. The Hosu police chief said while bowing. It wasn't me, I don't have the required skill to take him down. Copy Neen said honestly. Then who was it? HPC asked, confused. It was my intern with my permission. I then gave him permission to take Native and another hero student, this one operating without permission, to the hospital. Copy Neen planet. I also gave him permission to heal Ingenium of his injuries received. What is your intern's hero name and name, if I may ask? HPC questioned curiously. As long as you do not announce his civilian name, I will tell you. Copy Neen said, dead serious. You have my word. HPC vowed. Hero name: the Shapeshifting hero. Myth: civilian name Izuku Aizawa. Copy Neen answered. Thank you. HPC said, once again bowing in thanks. Class 1A is in their dorm common room watching TV when the news comes on with a special broadcast. Today we bring an interview with the chief of police in Hosu City about the arrest of the hero ender, Stain. A news reporter said before turning her attention to the chief. Who arrested Stain? It was done legally by Hero Corps student Myth. The chief answered honestly. Now, that is their hero name and we know their civilian name, but we will not be releasing it to the public. What do you mean legally? Do they have a license? The reporter bombarded him with questions. They do not, but they were given permission to use their quirk to take down the hero ender, because while Copy Neen, an underground hero, did not have the ability to do so, Myth did. The chief answered bluntly. They were also given permission to use their quirk to heal Ingenium, so Ingenium will be back out helping people in no time. Thank you, Chief, and a very special thank you to Myth from both the city and the families of the people staying ended or injured. The reporter said before she signed off. All of Class 1A turned and gawked at Izuku, who was blushing from embarrassment, but that soon turned to fear when he spotted the looks from Momo and Jiro. He didn't hit me a single time, I don't have a scratch on me, and backup was there in case I needed it, so I did it safely. Izuku said quickly, trying to spare himself. Fine, since you had help there, if you needed it we'll let it slide. Yaoyorozu said pointedly. Izuku let out a sigh of relief, and something he didn't expect to happen did. Kendo ran up to him and hugged him. He freaked out at first but settled down as soon as he realized he wasn't being attacked. What's this for Kendo? Izuku asked, very confused. Why would you take on the hero Ender? Kendo asked with tears forming in her eyes. Izuku didn't answer because he didn't want to expose Ida, but that wasn't an issue apparently because Ida spoke up. It was because of me. I was blinded by my rage about my brother being attacked and paralyzed by Stain, and I lost control of myself and acted on that rage. Ida answered with his head bowed in shame. I was about to be ended when Izuku literally swooped in and saved me. He then went on and healed my brother. Momo, Jiro, and Kendo turned towards Ida in sync, scaring every guy in the room including Izuku. So you're the reason Izuku was in danger. The three girls shouted in anger. Ida chose the smart option and ran for his life, but he was dragged back in by Aizawa. Didn't I say you were under house arrest for the stunt you pulled? You should be glad I don't expel you for going out and doing that. Aizawa said angrily. How would it have looked if UA got yet another red mark in the first couple months of school? We've already got 2 because of Katsuki and Mineta. So he only cares because it would have damaged the school's reputation, not because I was put in danger, Izuku thought to himself. Izuku left for his dorm, his sadness being spotted by Momo, Jiro, and Kendo. All 3 were now very angry at Aizawa, their anger at Ida long forgotten. Momo, Jiro, and Kendo, knowing they can't do anything against Aizawa without getting expelled, left towards Izuku's dorm. They entered without knocking and found him crying in his miniature stable in baby unicorn form. If it had been a different circumstance they would have awed at the sight. Went over and sat next to him, letting him know he's not alone but not really saying anything. Quiet presence is often more comforting than talking, at least in my experience. It's time for final exams. Izuku and Momo did their best to help everybody in the class, but there's only so much 2 people can do for 18 others. They all have a decent to good feeling about how they did on the written exam, but now it's time for the practical, and while everybody has said it's just the robots again, Izuku has his doubts and voiced them to everybody and helped them to over-prepare so that no matter what was thrown at them they were ready. Hello students, I'm sure you are all wondering why all the teachers are here. Nizu greeted cheerily. It's because Aizawa was right and we're not fighting the robots, we're fighting the teachers. Kaminari answered. Boy, am I glad Aizawa helped us over-prepare when we thought it was robots. You are correct, Mr. Kaminari. Nizu said, sounding happy and a touch proud. That's a first. Jiro commented jokingly. Anyways, you'll be paired up and the teachers will have limiters put on them to even it out as best as we can. Nizu explained. You may look at the board to find out who you're paired with and who you are fighting. Where is Aizawa's name, not Mr. Aizawa's? Kendo asked upon noticing the absence in the list. That's because he is a special case. He shall be fighting solo and the teacher he is fighting shall have no restraints. Nizu answered, causing the class to worry. Then who is he fighting? Kirishima asked, voicing his worry. Either All Might or Aizawa, that choice is his. Nizu stated. I'll fight All Might. Izuku answered, shocking everybody. Interesting choice. May we know your reasoning? Nizu asked curiously. I have a few reasons actually. I have a few personal reasons that would hinder me if I were to fight with Mr. Aizawa. Not only that, while we are evenly matched with using the scarf and martial arts, he has more experience, so I would need my quirk to fight him, and he knows almost everything there is to know about my quirk, meaning I would be at a severe disadvantage, so I'm choosing the smartest option. Izuku explained calmly. Fighting All Might is the best choice, because we've already seen that I have the physical strength and speed to keep up with and surpass him, but it's also because I don't have the same personal issues with fighting him leaving me with the advantage. Smart, I guess you now know who Izuku is fighting. Nizu said, moving on from the subject. Does anybody else wish to fight a teacher without their restraints on, perhaps solo? I will have to at least attempt to measure myself against Izuku. He was right with what he tried to tell me at the sports festival, but I was stupid and refused to listen. Todoroki said, slightly ashamed of himself. I cannot become a hero if I let my personal grudges get in the way of giving it my absolute all to save someone, and that means using my fire as well as my ice. I shall fight Eraserhead. Very well, the matches are set up and we are almost ready to begin. Nizu announced cheerily. We're just waiting for Cementos to give us the signal that he's finished prepping the arenas. Midnight pulled Aizawa aside and around a corner just before it was her turn to start the test. What do you think you're doing to that poor kid? You're supposed to be his father. Midnight said with tears in her eyes from the pain Izuku is going through. Jiro noticed Izuku shift his ears to hear what was going on, so she decided to listen in as well. With the way you're acting, it's like he lost both parents instead of just one. Midnight said, pleading for Aizawa to see reason. I get that you loved her, but if she's watching what you're doing to her baby boy, then you are in for one hell of a beating when you die. What am I supposed to do? I can't stand to see his face. Aizawa yelled. He's literally an exact replica of Inko, and every time I look at him it's like he's shoving a knife right into my heart. So you decided to get even by hurting him for something that's not his fault? You're acting just like those kids who used to attack you because of your quirk. Midnight ranted, anger clear in her voice before walking away from Aizawa to prevent herself from hitting him. Midnight then goes back into the observation room and spots the tears in Izuku's eyes and the ears on his head and immediately knows that he heard every word they said. She's shocked and is about to go towards Izuku, but it's time for her round, so she has to leave. By the time Midnight's round is over and she gets back, Izuku is nowhere to be found. He's on a bus heading towards his round with All Might. When the round starts, the first thing All Might does is throw a punch using wind pressure to destroy all the buildings, and Izuku walks right down the middle of the fake city towards All Might. Thank you, Izuku said numbly. Why are you, a hero, thanking me, a villain? All Might questioned, remaining in character despite his confusion. You destroyed every building in the city with that punch, meaning that there's no need for me to try to minimize property damage so I can go all out. Izuku explained emotionlessly. Everybody is watching and listening to everything, and they don't like how Izuku is sounding. He sounds almost like a robot with his lack of emotion. They see him start to shift and they see his werewolf form, but after he's in his werewolf form something else happens. Armor starts to form around him, increasing his defense, and he gets in a stance before he's all of a sudden he's right in front of All Might, throwing a direct jab, sending All Might flying before All Might gets back up. Immediately Izuku is directly in front of him and placing quirk-canceling cuffs on him. All Might then passed out. Computer, exam over. Izuku Aizawa has passed the exam. Everybody in the observation room is in shock from the events that transpired. Izuku defeated All Might in one punch. They still haven't picked up their jaws by the time Izuku enters, carrying an unconscious All Might over his shoulder. He sets All Might in a chair before surveying the room, spotting everybody but Todoroki and Aizawa. Izuku sits and watches the last exam to take place, which is Aizawa and Todoroki. Todoroki opens the match immediately with a giant roofed ice maze functioning like a hall of mirrors, effectively making Aizawa's quirk useless by preventing him from knowing which one is the real Todoroki. You're ending Aizawa from the inside out, and I can't let that stand, Todoroki says coldly, barely restraining his anger. Todoroki then seemingly appeared behind Aizawa and punches him with his right hand, which is encased in an ice gauntlet, before disappearing again. This is done by manipulating the ice to create and block doorways, essentially in a hit-and-run tactic. Todoroki first causes a bunch of fake imps by using the mirror-like ice, causing Aizawa to quickly run out of time for his quirk, due to overuse and the cold temperatures drying out his eyes, and then continues to beat on him with the ice gauntlet and a flaming fist until he's unconscious, then proceeds to put the cuffs on Aizawa, passing the exam. Everybody came to shortly after Todoroki formed the ice maze and were surprised to see Todoroki using his fire. They were also surprised to see another of their classmates beat a pro hero solo without the hero having any kind of restraints or limiters on. Well, this is a shocking turn of events. Principal Nizu said, slightly in shock. Congratulations to those who passed, but you are all going on the camping trip, and if you need anything you may head to the mall and get it. He says, moving on. But, to those that didn't pass, you will all be taking remedial lessons with Aizawa. Nizu and the rest of the teachers depart carrying the two unconscious ones with them, and the students headed to the dorms, most of them excited for the camping trip. Kendo, Momo, and Jiro worried about Izuku. Kendo sits beside Izuku in the dorms and pulls him into a hug, knowing that while he's not showing it, he's in a great amount of pain. After Kendo breaks the hug, Izuku pulls out a piece of paper from his notebook and begins writing a letter to Aizawa. Dear Mr. Aizawa, I'm sorry that I've caused you so much pain. That was never my intention, and I hope you can accept my apology. I've thought of a solution to stop your pain, or at least ease it a little. Sincerely, painful reminder. Izuku then gets up and heads into the hall with both his and Aizawa's rooms and slides the letter underneath Mr. Aizawa's door before heading to his room for the night. The next day, Izuku and the others in Class 1A head to the mall to pick up a few last-minute supplies and something else. Izuku broke off from the group to head to the costume store to pick up a special item. Izuku was waiting by the fountain when out of nowhere his neck was grabbed by somebody. Long time no see, Aizawa. How have you been since I dusted mommy dearest and shoved a knife in your back? Shigaraki questioned mockingly. You should be glad that I'm a hero student trying to be a hero instead of a villain or vigilante. Izuku threatened. Oh yeah, and why's that? Shigaraki questioned, confused and curious. Because I would have ended you by now if I was. Izuku answered emotionlessly. Izuku had shifted his hand into the clawed hand of his regular werewolf form and said claws were directly against Shigaraki's stomach, meaning that they were at a draw, or not, seeing as how if anyone recognizes Shigaraki, other heroes will arrive. Izuku then speaks at a high enough frequency that Shigaraki can't hear him, but Jiro can by shifting his vocal cords. Shigaraki is here and has his hand on my throat, but I have my hand shifted and at his stomach. Get a pro hero here fast. Izuku asked her urgently. I'm at the fountain near the center of the mall. About 5 minutes later, the class arrives at the scene and spots me and Shigaraki. The odds are in my favor now. Surrender peacefully and you won't end up in the hospital. Izuku threatened with anger in his voice. Izuku then spots the warp spot opening behind Shigaraki and notices his intent to take Izuku with him. Izuku then shifted into a kitten to get out of Shigaraki's grip, then into a cheetah and sprinted out of Shigaraki's reach and straight to Momo, Jiro, and Kendo, knowing that if he didn't they'd be very upset. He shifted back and got ready for a fight, and Shigaraki, knowing he had no shot at winning, decided to retreat for now. We see all of Class 1A on a bus heading for the training camp. Momo and Jiro are cuddling up asleep. Kirishima and Mina are also cuddling but not asleep. Hagakure and Ojiro, Uraraka and Azui, Shinso and Denki, Aoyama and Tokoyami, and Kendo and Izuku. Izuku is wearing the special item he bought at the mall. A black kitsune mask with white designs, and has his hood from his jacket up to cover his hair. At first the others were confused as to why he was wearing the mask and hood. Izuku refused to explain why, so Jiro told everybody about the argument between Mr. Aizawa and Midnight. They were shocked and now understood why Momo and Jiro developed their mom modes, as Mina dubbed them. They understood that Izuku's self-sacrificing nature is what brought this along. Alright brats, everybody off. Aizawa ordered coldly. Everybody got off the bus and were met with a black car pulling up. 2 girls, a dude and a kid all got out of the car before 3 of the 4 struck a pose. Izuku immediately recognized who they were. The training camp is at the base of the mountain all the way over there. Mandalay explained while pointing towards the mountain. You have 3 hours to get there or no dinner. Who's the kid with the mask? Pixie Bob asked curiously. He's the winner of the sports festival. Aizawa said emotionlessly. Aizawa, you're not allowed to use your quirk to help the others. Understood, sensei. Izuku said blankly, hiding his pain once again. Pixie Bob then threw them off the mountain, but Izuku used his capture scarf that he always wears as a reminder of the time Aizawa was a good father to him, an emotional anchor if you will, to grab Kendo, Yaoyorozu, and Jiro while using the other end to snag one of the trees and swing down before gently landing. He then took his mask off. "Is everybody alright?" Izuku asked concerned. "We're all good," Mina answered, getting a sigh of relief from Izuku. "Kirishima, Itsuka, and Ojiro, we need you to take point. Put those martial arts lessons I gave you to good use, Kirishima," Izuku ordered, getting everybody organized. "Ida, I need you to scout ahead to see what's going on and why we were given 3 hours when it would only take us half an hour without obstacles. Do not engage, just recon." Ida nodded in understanding. "Momo, be ready for if we need bandages. Kaminari, you are a last resort, so don't go shorting out. Jiro, please keep an ear on Ida if he calls for help. Hagakure, how good are you at stealth?" "I'm no master like you and Aizawa-sensei, but I shouldn't be spotted," Hagakure answered with a pun to try and lighten the mood, receiving a couple chuckles in return. "I need you to go a little bit ahead of Kirishima and the other two as a backup scout to keep an eye on things while Ida is reporting his findings," Izuku said, and she nodded though it wasn't seen by anybody. "Koda, can you get the birds to keep an eye out from above for us? Tell them I said please and that it'd mean a lot to us." Koda nodded shyly before doing as requested. "Tokoyami, I need you at the back playing defense along with Shoji. Aoyama, you're also a last resort until you can learn to function with your quirk despite its drawback. Shinso, I don't think your quirk will work against whatever is out here, so please stick close to the back. I'm putting you on rear guard because while you can function with the capture scarf, you're not quite skilled enough to take enemies head-on yet." The mentioned group nodded and moved into position without hesitation or complaint. "Tsu, can you hop through the trees to get a higher vantage on any possible enemies? Uraraka, you are also a last resort because of your strength but also the danger your strategy poses to us should we make one wrong move. Mina and Siro, I need you guarding our left side to prevent flanking. Todoroki, I need you on our right side. And Sato, you are with Kaminari because of your similar drawback. Is there anyone I missed?" "You got us all," Yaoyorozu said, and Izuku nodded in thanks. "Then let's move out and stay safe, everyone. As you heard, I'm not allowed to use my quirk to help you, but that doesn't mean I won't help without using it," Izuku said, and everybody nodded in understanding. Everybody then moved along with the plan. Ida ran ahead and spotted a blockade of dirt monsters before trying to sprint back but having his path blocked by more dirt monsters. "Jiro, I am in need of assistance," Ida called out, slightly alarmed. "Ida needs assistance," Jiro reported, alerting everybody. "Tsu, you're up, go and retrieve him," Izuku said, and Azui nodded. "Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." "Roger that," Azui said, already moving through the trees. Azui then took to the trees and was able to retrieve Ida, but they were followed by the dirt monsters. "Kirishima, Itsuka, and Ojiro, you're up," Izuku said, and got looks of determination in return. "Understood, bro," Kirishima said, already activating his quirk. They then moved to intervene and dispatch the dirt monsters quickly and efficiently with the group following. "Dirt monsters on our left," Jiro said, alerting Izuku to the threat right before he spotted it himself. "Siro, you tape them. Mina, you dissolve them quickly," Izuku ordered. "On it," Mina said, already moving into position. They proceeded through the forest at a quick pace with Ida scouting and returning, and they made it through in about an hour. Izuku only had to step in once to help the vanguard deal with an overwhelming number of dirt monsters. Kirishima ended up with a split lip from being hit in the face, but overall was fine. Izuku didn't even use his quirk. Izuku put his mask back on and pulled his hood up before exiting the forest. "Aizawa, the only way you guys got through that quickly was if you used your quirk," Aizawa said with anger visible on his face and obvious from his tone. "Actually, the only thing he did was organize everybody effectively, and the only time he intervened was when I threw about 30 at the guys in front, and even then he only used his capture weapon to dispatch them." Pixie Bob stepped in nervously. "All right, a deal's a deal. Dinner is on the table ready for you, and we have an outdoor bath for before bed," Mandalay informed the tired group. "The bath is split by gender, and we don't want any peeking, you hear me? Izuku would deal with us if we even dared to think about something like that, so you don't have to worry about that," Kaminari said with a shiver of fear. "Dude can be scary when he wants to be. Actually, I let Zook deal with the times that being scary is required," Izuku answered honestly with a nervous chuckle. That makes a lot more sense now. Mina said, laughing joyously. Alrighty then, we're only cooking for you for today. Mandalay said with a clap to draw everybody's attention back to her. Starting tomorrow you are cooking your own meals, so everybody get ready for us to break you and build you up stronger than before. Everybody nodded with enough sheer determination to unease the pro-heroes. Dismissed. They were eating, well, everyone but Izuku, who was waiting for Mr. Aizawa to either leave or actually go to sleep, when the kid from before walked off, so Izuku grabbed his plate plus an extra for the kid and followed him all the way to the mountain. You know, if you don't eat, the wild pussycats will get worried. Izuku said, accidentally startling the kid. How did you find this place? Koda asked, still a bit uneasy. I followed you to give you some food. I've noticed that you hold a hatred towards us, but I don't understand it. Izuku said curiously. You don't have to tell me, but I'll tell you my story first, then you can decide whether or not you want to tell yours. Koda nodded his head before grabbing the extra plate from Izuku, who then removed his mask. I was constantly attacked starting as soon as I turned 4 by a kid who was treated like a god by the male teachers and male students. This continued on until UA, but soon after the start of UA, he took things far enough for the faculty to launch a full investigation into him and his past, where they were able to dig up security footage dating back to when we were 4 years old that showed his true colors. Izuku explained, sparing much detail since he's talking to a kid who doesn't need to hear about the true darkness of others even though he's already experienced it himself. He was then expelled and was being sent to prison, but the transport never arrived. Then after the USJ incident where villains snuck onto UA campus and attacked the class and the villains lost, so the boss retreated only to later stop by my house to end my mom right in front of me. Koda looked to be in tears at this point but motioned for Izuku to continue. Ever since then my stepdad won't look at me and doesn't acknowledge my existence unless forced to, and even then it's not more than one sentence before I'm back in non-existence land. Izuku continued explaining. He told another teacher that even looking at me was like I was driving a knife right into his heart. That's why I have the mask. Koda was crying at this point. The reason I'm not giving up is the fact that I don't want anybody else to experience what I am or have. How do you have the strength for your goal after you lost your parents? Koda asked, unable to stop himself. I look to those that care about me for strength and push forward with every fiber in my being. Izuku answered honestly, thinking about one, mostly Yaoyorozu, Jiro, and Kendo. I'll tell you my story. My name is Koda Izumi, Mandalay is my aunt. Koda started and Izuku listened silently. My parents were the water hose duo heroes. They were ended by a villain. They left me behind and alone. Koda sobbed out. I heard about that on the news. They saved 500 people that day. They are true heroes. Izuku said honestly, his voice filled with respect for the duo and sympathy for Koda. They didn't want to leave you, Koda, and you're not alone. You have your aunt and the rest of the WWP with you. They care about you. Koda looked up at him in shock. Even if it's not the same as your parents, and nobody could ever replace them, your aunt cares about you. Koda started bawling again. Judging by the look on her face when you left without eating, she's trying her best and you're throwing it back in her face. I'm not trying to lecture you and I'm sorry if that's what it sounds like. Izuku apologized. Are you ready to head back or do you want to stay here for a while longer? I'll stay here a little while longer. Koda said quietly. All right then, stay safe, I'm heading back to camp. Izuku said, getting up. Izuku got up and put his mask back on before grabbing his plate and starting on his journey back to the camp. When he arrived, he washed his dirty dishes before grabbing his stuff and headed to the bath early. He soaked for about 10 minutes before the other guys arrived. They joined him in the outdoor tub. He continued his soak for another 10 minutes before leaving with Zook, giving them a message. If I hear anything about anybody attempting to sneak a peek, there'll be hell to pay. Zook threatened. Understood, Zook. Every boy responded with a shiver of fear. Izuku got out of the tub and as he was walking away they saw the scarring on Izuku's back from Bakugo and Shigaraki. Many of them gasped while everybody was shocked. Izuku put on his mask before continuing out. He got dressed but didn't put a shirt on before heading towards the boys' cabin set up for the training camp. On the way he heard a gasp from behind him. It was Koda and Mandalay, who seemed to have made up at least slightly. Sorry, I thought I'd be able to make it to the cabin before anybody saw me. Izuku apologized sincerely. It's no problem, I was coming to thank you for what you said to Koda. Mandalay answered, staring at the scars on his chest and stomach. There's no need. Izuku said humbly. Yes there is, because of you Koda and I's relationship is on the mend. Mandalay said insistently. Is that scarring on your back from the incident for investigation? Or sometime else? Koda asked worriedly. The burn scar is, but the stab scar is from the other incident. Izuku answered honestly, confusing Mandalay. What are you guys talking about? Mandalay asked, also worried. I noticed the hatred he has or had for heroes, so in an attempt to get him to open up I told him my life story. Izuku answered honestly, not seeing a need to hide his actions. I didn't try to force his story out of him or anything like that. Izuku took his mask off before putting his shirt on. How did you get the scarring on your back? Mandalay asked, mostly worried but a little curious as well. An incident that occurred at the beginning of the year. You don't need to worry about me, it doesn't hurt too much anymore. Izuku said, trying to ease Mandalay and Koda's worry. Recovery girl forces me to get regular checkups on it so I know that it is fully healed. Good night, see you tomorrow for training. Mandalay said, unsure of how to switch topics without things getting awkward, so she opted to end the conversation instead. Good night, see you tomorrow. Izuku said with a genuine smile. I'm glad you and Koda are mending your relationship, I hope things get easier for you. Izuku then headed towards the cabin where the others arrived shortly after. Izuku was just sitting on one of the bottom bunks waiting for them, knowing they'd either have questions or comments. Was that the scarring that Bakugo caused? Kirishima asked curiously. He was disowned, meaning he's not a Bakugo anymore, and yes, the burn scar covering most of my back is. Izuku explained. The stab wound, however, is not. That is a gift from Shigaraki when he made a house call. Everybody understood what he was referring to and dropped the subject. Good night, everybody. Izuku laid down facing the wall and went to sleep to be ready to train tomorrow with OFA to increase his percentage without shifting his muscles to accommodate it. It's about midday and Izuku can be seen in the woods working on quickly shifting the percentage so that he doesn't break the trees he's bouncing off of while maneuvering quickly and quietly. He has his mask on just in case Mr. Aizawa comes to get him out of the woods. He's been going at it for a while and is quite successful too when Kirishima comes out to get him. Aizawa, it's time for lunch. Kirishima called out. Kirishima screamed when Izuku appeared beside him with the black mask on. Sorry Kirishima, didn't mean to startle you. Izuku said apologetically. No problem bro, it's time for lunch and apparently we have to cook it ourselves. Kirishima said a bit uncertain. They told us that yesterday, let's go so that way we can pitch in on the cooking. Izuku said, already exiting the forest with Kirishima on his tail. Izuku and Kirishima headed back and split up with Izuku heading straight to cooking, saving the meal from being burnt and whatnot. Izuku got everybody organized in tasks they could complete while he dealt with the finer, more difficult stuff. Soon enough everybody had a plate but was hesitant to taste it. They all watched Mr. Aizawa walk away, stating that Izuku's cooking tasted just like Inko's. As soon as Mr. Aizawa was around the corner, Izuku took off his mask and started eating and everybody else followed suit. What's up with him? Mandalay asked, referring to Aizawa. Izuku got up and left back to the woods to continue training after putting his mask back on. That's a sore subject for the both of them. Yaoyorozu said with a sad look, watching where Izuku disappeared at. What do you mean? Pixie Bob asked curiously. Mr. Aizawa is Aizawa's stepdad. Hagakure answered nervously. I'm still not following. Ragdoll said, still very confused. Aiza's mother was ended right in front of him and he was unable to save her, and Mr. Aizawa hasn't really interacted with Aizu since. Jiro explained in more detail. Mr. Aizawa's reasoning is that Aizu is an exact replica of his mother, just the male version. That's why he took the time to help me and Koda. Is that why he wears the mask? Mandalay asked, even more worried than she was last night. He wears that mask as an attempt to lessen the pain Mr. Aizawa feels, and it seems like Mr. Aizawa doesn't care that Izuku is willing to die to save him. Yaoyorozu said with barely restrained anger. This got all the WWPs thinking and none of them could figure out a way to help them. Both are wallowing in grief, but Izuku is putting more suffering on himself to help Mr. Aizawa. Izuku came back about an hour later and spotted Class 1B arrive but avoided them, not sure whether or not they could be trusted. Izuku watched as Kendo arrived and tried to greet her friends, only to be met with glares from the majority of her former classmates. Kendo tried to talk, but Monoma decided it was his time to die by throwing a massively sloppy punch with a copied version of Tetsu's Quirk. In an instant, Izuku was in front of Kendo and caught Monoma's fist in his hand before applying pressure and releasing. Izuku turned to Kendo and saw the tears in her eyes because of her former classmates' actions. Kendo was your friend and you betrayed her, Izuku said with anger in his voice. Unless given the go-ahead by her, you are to stay away from Class 1A unless instructed by either the Wild Pussycats or our homeroom teachers, am I clear? Class 1B started to laugh and mock Kendo and him, with a few exceptions, those being Pony, Yanagi, and Tetsu. All of a sudden the air around them changed, and it was noticed by the pros, who quickly approached and spotted the crying Kendo and the now terrified Class 1B. I said, am I clear? Zook yelled enraged. Class 1B ran off quite quickly except the three who stayed to talk to Kendo. As soon as all but the three were gone, Kendo spoke up. I'm okay, Zook, can you calm down please? Kendo asked softly. Would you prefer if I let Izuku back out? Zook asked, sincerely worried for Kendo. We rarely get to see you, so if it's all right with Izuku, I'd like to hang out with you after we see what these three wanted. Kendo answered honestly and Zook nodded. We wanted to see how you've been since you moved to Class 1A. By the way, that was manly how you caught Monoma's fist like that. Tetsu said excitedly. Where did you even come from? Izuku learned how to shift his muscles to massively increase our speed and strength, but not quite to the level of the shifted forms. Zook answered. Izuku was just over there. He had spotted the bus pull up and Kendo walk over and knew that at least some of you would have bad blood with her because of her switching classes, so he waited to see if help was required. All four of the others became saddened at the reminder of what just occurred. We both know that Kendo can take care of herself, but something inside us sparked up and we couldn't stop ourselves from rushing in, though we were able to restrain ourselves from doing any damage to anything but his ego, which desperately needed it. Why are you referring to yourself in the third person? Yanagi asked curiously. I am not, I am Zook and I was talking about Izuku. Zook attempted to explain. Due to trauma, I was created as a split personality. I only come out if I feel like somebody needs to have a need to change their pants. Manly! Tetsu cheered. I'm sorry for making a quick assumption. Yanagi apologized sincerely. It's no issue, why don't we take this to the dining area? Zook suggested, brushing aside the apology. Lead the way. Yanagi said, gesturing with her arm. That was how they spent the next several hours. They were talking when Zook noticed how low the sun was and decided it was time to switch back. It was fun being out and talking with you all. Zook said, confusing everybody. Where you going? Tsunatori questioned, voicing everybody's confusion. I'm switching back with Izuku. Zook answered. Okay, well, it was nice talking to you. Tsunatori said, and Zook gave her a genuine smile. Zook nodded in Pony's direction before switching back. Izuku gave them an awkward smile before walking over to the cooking area and started working on dinner. It didn't take long for them to realize what was happening. It was getting late and Izuku was cooking dinner for the others. Is this normal? Yanagi asked, a touch worried. In the beginning it wasn't, but the more Mr. Aizawa hurts him, the further he puts his own feelings from his mind to keep the pain from getting to him and starts acting more like a father to the rest of the class. Kendo answered honestly. You seem to have a crush on him. Tsunatori's blunt statement caused Kendo to freeze and think about it. The more she thought about it, the more she realized Tsunatori's statement was true, and the more she realized, the redder she got. An exhausted Class 1A and a terrified Class 1B minus Monoma entered the dining area. Class 1A was pleasantly surprised to see the food already cooked, while 1B thought is was normal. Who cooked? Yaoyorozu asked, confused. Aizawa did. We were talking with Zook before he switched so Aizawa could start cooking. Tetsu answered honestly. Kendo, what brought Zook out? Jiro asked worriedly, already searching both her and Izuku for injuries. Monoma did. Where is he, by the way? Yanagi answered before noticing his absence. He's been in a lecture from Vlad-sensei since the incident. Setsuna answered. You mean since he tried to use Tetsutetsu's quirk to attack Kendo and Aizawa appeared out of nowhere and caught the fist? Tsunatori corrected. He did what? Yaoyorozu raged immediately. I'm gonna end that prick for trying to hurt Kendo. Zook already put the fear of God and the devil into him, so I don't think that's necessary. Kendo said, trying to calm Yaoyorozu. Yeah, Zook is terrifying alright, but he has a good heart just like Aizawa, so if he does something like that it is well deserved. Kaminari said from his seat. Zook says thank you Kaminari. Izuku said from behind Kaminari when nobody noticed him walk over and he has the mask on again, getting a collection of looks from Class 1B. Everybody started eating until Class 1B stopped and just stared at the food in amazement. Why would you let us eat such good food after what we did? Setsuna asked with tears of regret in her eyes. Because taking away food is not a punishment. Izuku answered honestly. Adding an extra variable like weighted clothing to training as long as it's a reasonable weight is, however, though I'm not in a position to do that luckily for you all. If you know about weighted clothing, then how much do your clothes weigh when you're working out? Kirishima asked in awe. Not much, just 20 pounds for each sock and about 50 for the pants and another 50 for the shirt, so about 140 pounds. Izuku answered nonchalantly. Don't forget to add in the speed I go during training and how many reps I do. Manly! Kirishima and Tetsutetsu screamed in sync. It's the last day of training camp, and to celebrate, those that did not fail the final exam are taking part in a game of sorts. Izuku decided he'd rather not play a game about scaring, seeing as he could just shift into a boggart. He instead followed Koda to his hideout. How are you doing, Koda? Izuku asked. Much better than before, big brother. Koda said with a smile before realizing what he said and panicking. It's alright. I would actually like to be your big brother if that's what you want. Izuku said, calming Koda down. Well, ain't that cute? It almost makes me not want to end you. Muscular said. You're the one Shigaraki said to end on sight in the most painful way possible. I think it'll be more painful to end the kid in front of you like we did your mother. This pissed off both Zook and Izuku, both at the mention of ending Koda and the realization that he was the one that held him down. He's the one that ended them. He's the one that ended my parents. Koda said in a panic. So you've made a habit of ending parents, then why don't I make a habit of punching you so hard your bones break? Zook said, pissed. You're working with Shigaraki and the LOV, which makes you their dog, so what is it they're after, Fido? I'm not a dog. Muscular shouted angrily. We're gonna win this fight rather than ending in a loss or draw. We're gonna get both that bird kid and the brainwasher. So they're after Tokoyami and Shinso. Well, at least now we know their targets. Koda, go hide in your hideout while I deal with this. Zook ordered. Koda ran while Zook shifted his muscles and powered up OFA to 100% and went for a punch. He felt Muscular's bones break on impact and heard his screams of pain, but knew that the fight wasn't over yet, especially when he looked back and saw the rush of muscle mass aimed right for him. Zook dodged the first go-round, but knew that he couldn't dodge the second, so he met it head-on and they were at a stalemate. Zook knew that if they kept going he'd eventually win, but if this was a full assault then others will need his help, so he has to increase his power. He shifts into the rock golem form, giving his body more room, giving him access to both a bigger and faster flow of power. He then punched Muscular straight into the mountain, knocking him out cold, and Koda came out of hiding and spotted Muscular in the side of the mountain and the golem he knew to be Zook standing victoriously. Izuku then took back control and shifted into the griffin form and using the talons on his front feet to grab Muscular out of the side of the mountain before lowering enough that Koda could get on his back. As soon as Koda was on his back, he took to the sky as fast as he could with Muscular in his talons. He soon found the wild pussycats and Eraserhead in a clearing and landed directly on top of Magna, who was about to charge at the down tiger while Spinner was keeping the other four heroes at bay. They took down Spinner before heading over to Izuku and Koda. Izuku shifted back before turning to the heroes. This idiot was so sure of his victory that he spilled their targets. Izuku said, pointing at Muscular before heading over to Tiger and helping him up. They have two goals with an if the opportunity presents itself kind of thing. Well, what are they after, Aizawa? Eraserhead demanded. 2 capture target and the opportunistic target is a end one. Izuku continued. They're trying to capture Tokoyami and Shinso, sir. And the end target? Mandalay asked worried. Me. Izuku said simply. I'll be heading out and picking up other students. Izuku took off with the heroes screaming at him to come back, that he was in more danger than them. Izuku continued on his path and shifted into a black jaguar and found Uraraka and Tsu being attacked by Toga, who he quickly stopped by pouncing on her, knocking her head on the ground, knocking her out. Uraraka and Azui, knowing it was Izuku, thanked him before running off towards the camp, and Izuku continued on his way. He found Momo and Jiro being attacked by a Nomu, so he shifted into his werewolf form and picked up the Nomu and, chucking it into the mountains, spotting the tracker on it, otherwise he would have ended it. Momo, can you make a few items for me along with a megaphone? Izuku asked. Yeah, here you go. Momo said after creating the items. The items consisted of several gas masks and several shields. Izuku had spotted Mustard and Moonfish on his way, the drop-off Koda and Muscular. Students of 1A and 1B gather in this direction, so we have the advantage of numbers. Izuku shouted. I repeat, gather in this direction, so we have the advantage of numbers. The students heard Izuku's voice and started sprinting in his direction. It didn't take long before everybody arrived. Where's Tokoyami, Shinso, and Minoma? Izuku asked, not seeing them. They were right behind us. Kirishima and Tetsu said in sync. I can answer that question for you. Compress said, entering the clearing. I have them right here. I've actually had them for a while, but when I heard you shout for your classmates, I knew you were going to put on a show, and I just had to see it for myself. He said, showing 3 marbles. What Compress didn't expect was for Izuku to suddenly appear in front of him and punch him in the gut and trying to snag the marbles out of the air. Out of nowhere, Dabi appeared and snagged one of them before they backed into the appearing warp behind them. Compress released his quirk, revealing who got who. Izuku had Tokoyami and Minoma, while Dabi was holding Shinso by the back of his neck. Izuku tried to lunge forward, but the warp closed too fast. After realizing that he failed to save Shinso, Izuku collapsed to his knees and screamed out at the world with all he had until he lost his voice, and even then you could see him mouthing curses. At either the world or himself, nobody could tell. Class 1A, Class 1B, and the heroes all looked on in pity, sympathy, and guilt. I'm a failure. I failed to save somebody right in front of me again. Izuku whispered out, barely audible, but due to the silence surrounding them, everybody heard it. Izuku proceeded to stand up and started waving everybody back towards the camp, and they listened, even the usually challenging Minoma. Kendo, Momo, and Jiro stayed behind, knowing that Izuku would break at any moment, and he did as soon as the others were out of sight and inside the building. They went ahead and huddled around him in a group hug, comforting the distraught boy. Izuku woke up shortly before the first responders arrived and couldn't find his mask. The first vehicle to arrive was an ambulance, which he put Momo and Jiro in, Momo on the gurney, seeing as she had a broken arm and a possible concussion. The ambulance left as soon as both Momo and Jiro were loaded onto it, and soon pro-heroes arrived to search the premises for any stragglers. A total of 3 villains were captured that day, and 2 students especially were forever grateful to Izuku. The captured villains were Mustard, Moonfish, and Muscular. Soon after everybody arrived out front, a bus pulled up to take the students back to UA. Izuku had come up with an idea on the bus ride back to UA. He decided to head to the Bakugo residence to visit his family, seeing as Mr. Aizawa no longer wanted anything to do with him. He was also going to ask if he could become a Bakugo in name at least. Anyways, as soon as they arrived back at campus, Izuku left towards the Bakugo residence to do as he was planning. It didn't take long to get there, but something was wrong and Izuku could feel it. He charged up OFA before slowly entering. He heard Mitsuki Bakugo scream, so he rushed only to see as Katsuki literally exploded her head. He also spotted what looked to be the remains of an exploded Masaru. He charged Katsuki, nailing him with a gut punch. The punch sent Katsuki flying through the wall and onto the street, which was filled with onlookers as they had heard Mitsuki's scream. They watched as a feral-looking Katsuki flew out the wall and Izuku climbed out of it. You ended Auntie Mitsuki and Uncle Masaru. Why? Izuku screamed at Katsuki. Because the beach deserved it and so did that old man. Next I'm gonna get the beach they replaced me with. Katsuki screamed back, not noticing the news crew or the audience. I'm not gonna let you hurt Katsumi even if it costs my life. Izuku vowed. Katsuki charged at him, using his explosions to propel himself even faster, but not fast enough as Izuku leaned to the side, dodging the explosions and the punch. Izuku sent his fist forward while lowering the percentage of OFA so that he only flew a normal distance. The fight went on for several minutes before Izuku spotted several pro heroes arriving. Among them was Endeavor and Hawks, who rushed forward and knocked Katsuki out of the air before landing in front of Izuku. Nice job holding him off, kid. What's your quirk? Hawks asked. It's shapeshifting, sir. Izuku responded. But you stayed in your human form. Does that mean you've been fending of this kid without your quirk this entire time? Hawks asked, surprised. I didn't have permission to use it, so I didn't. He ended the owners of the house, my aunt and uncle. His next target was my little cousin. I'm gonna go find her. Please, whatever you do, don't let him escape for what he's done. Izuku begged. You got it, kid. Now go get your cousin. You're more than likely the next of kin, so you'll be taking care of her. If the system tries to take her, send them to me. You've shown that you're more than capable of taking care of her by fending off the attacker while following the law, and based on your uniform you go to UA. Hawks said, waving the kid inside. Izuku rushed into the building shortly after Endeavor arrived and knew he had to be extremely fast because of the reckless way Endeavor fights. Izuku first checked the living room where the bodies were but couldn't find her, then checked the surrounding rooms with still no sign of her. He then went to the nursery and still found no signs. The next room he checked was the master bedroom with still no signs, leaving only one room left. Katsuki's old room. He entered the room and it looked like a shrine built to him, but if you looked closer it was more focused towards the 3-year-old Katsuki. They seemed to have built it for the old Katsuki, the one who was nice, the one who was friends with everybody before he got his quirk. Izuku searched everywhere he could think and couldn't find her. He soon smelled smoke and heard the screaming of the civilians, but it didn't deter him. He searched under the bed and even in the dresser when he remembered the secret compartment that was built into the closet in the master bedroom. He rushed out of Katsuki's old room and spotted the flames on the stairs leading to the first floor, but ignored that, knowing exactly where Katsumi is. He went into the room and rather than take the time to open the compartment door, simply gripped it and ripped it off, revealing the crying Katsumi, who looked terrified. As soon as she spotted Izuku, she reached her arms out to him and he picked her up and she clung to him like her life depended on it. He soon heard Endeavor scream in rage and pain. He knew that something went wrong. He also knew that he couldn't leave through any of the exits, seeing as he couldn't get to the first floor with the stairs on fire. He maneuvered his way to the bedroom window facing the street and looked out, spotting the enraged Endeavor with an injury over his right eye that looked like an explosion wound. He also spotted the fact that Hawks had no feathers due to him trying to protect the house to no avail. Izuku opened the window before shouting to Hawks. Am I allowed to use my quirk? Izuku asked. Yes, kid, do it or you won't survive. Hawks shouted. As soon as the yes left Hawks' mouth, Izuku backed up a little bit and sprouted his black Pegasus wings before wrapping them around himself and Katsumi and leaped through the open but too small window, breaking it and a little bit of the wall before opening his wings and slowly lowering to the ground safely. The civilians looked in awe of Izuku as he slowly descended. Hawks smiled at seeing both kids safe despite the raging house fire behind them. A little bit of soot and ash was on Izuku, but neither were on Katsumi. Endeavor hopped in the ambulance that arrived while the police took Izuku's statement. What happened here? The officer asked. I was stopping by to visit after the villain attack at the training camp when I felt something was wrong, so I entered carefully and heard my aunt scream, so I rushed in only to get there in time to see Katsuki explode her head, ending her. I also spotted the remains of what I think is my uncle's body. I accidentally activated my quirk and shifted my muscles before punching him and causing him to fly out of the house through the wall, where I proceeded to exit to keep him busy so he couldn't find Katsumi. Izuku relayed to the officer. After the first punch I turned my quirk off. I didn't mean to break any laws, officer. Even if you had used your quirk you wouldn't have broken any laws, kid, you're fine. The officer said. You should probably head back to UA since officers are on their way there to question everybody about the training camp incident. Thank you, officer, bye. Izuku said, rushing back to UA holding Katsumi. Izuku arrived back at UA before the police arrived and headed to his dorm room. Nobody was around because they were in their dorms sleeping off the adrenaline-fueled nightmare that happened last night. Not long after he got to his dorm and laid the sleeping Katsumi down on his bed, Mr. Aizawa arrived and called everybody out to the common room. Izuku came but stayed in the background. Alright, the police are here to question you about what you saw and heard last night, so be on your best behavior. Mr. Aizawa says. Mr. Aizawa walked off talking about money, leaving the students to wait on the police to call them, so Izuku went up and grabbed Katsumi, who had woken up and started crying, so he soothed her cries before heading back down when he was called. He got confused looks from everybody when they spotted him with a baby. Zuzu, what's with the baby? Kendo asked. Meet the last Bakugo. I left earlier today to go visit my family only to get there just as Katsuki, or villain known as Ground Zero, ended my Aunt Mitsuki, and I fended him off long enough for pro-heroes to arrive. Then I went back in the house to find her. By the time I found her, Endeavor had already lit the house on fire, so I had to jump out of the second-story window after getting permission to use my quirk. Izuku explained. I'm the baby's godfather. That means it's up to me to take care of her. What's her name? Mina asked. Katsumi. Izuku stated. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to talk with the officers before heading out to buy the necessary stuff for Katsumi. I'll go with you as soon as you're done. Kendo said. Izuku gave the police all the information he had before both he and Kendo went to the store to pick up the baby stuff. As Izuku and Kendo were going around the store with Izuku pushing Katsumi around in a newly bought baby stroller, many people stared at them, but they just ignored the stares and continued on with their day. A few people complimented them on having such a cute baby, and they just smiled and waved, not really denying it or admitting it. They were recognized from the sports festival and received several congratulations on that, as well as people asking for autographs, and they obliged. It took them a while to get everything he needed, along with making sure they didn't forget anything, but they knew that if push came to shove that Momo would be able to help after she got out of the hospital, which is where they're headed after they dropped the stuff off at the dorms. They were the last two to arrive, and Momo was surprised by the baby in Izuku's arms. After Izuku explained everything, Momo and Jiro scolded him, making him look like a kicked puppy. After they were done scolding him, Kirishima came up with the idea to save Shinso. In the end, the group that was going despite everyone else's protests was Momo, Kirishima, Todoroki, and Ida. Izuku decided to stay back because he had to take care of Katsumi. Everyone, except the ones who went on the rescue mission, was in the common room worrying about Shinso and the group when the show that was playing on the TV with nobody watching was interrupted by a special alert. It showed All Might fighting a villain but holding back, and they didn't know why until the camera panned over to the group of injured hero students and the still-moving Momo. Jiro cried out for Momo, and the others also cried out for their classmates. In the commotion, nobody but Kendo noticed Izuku leave. The only reason she knew is because he handed Katsumi to her. He had noticed that Momo was tying herself and the others together in a group and recognized why. She was waiting for him to save her like he always does. Izuku was spotted by Midnight, who was coming to keep an eye on Class 1A to keep anybody else from heading on a rescue mission, but she wasn't fast enough to stop him. He shifted into his griffin form and took off quickly in the direction of Kamino Ward. While flying, the only thought going through Izuku's head was, gotta go faster, and he subconsciously activated OFA at full power and flew much faster than the eye can see. Within 30 seconds he was in Kamino Ward, and Momo held up a loop in the rope that he snagged on the way, and out of nowhere they were gone from the screen in the common room. Where did they go? Jiro asked, worried. You don't need to worry, Izuku got them out of there. Kendo said calmly. He'll be back momentarily. Moments after she said that, they all heard the flap of wings and they all rushed outside despite Midnight's protest. When they got outside, they saw the group of injured students being gently set down before Izuku shifted forms again, this time into his phoenix form, to heal them all. As soon as he was done, he shifted back into his human form and untied the ropes from around them. Out of nowhere, Kirishima punched him in the face, and Izuku did nothing in retaliation. I asked you to come with us and you said no. We could have died and it would have been your fault. He screamed at Izuku. He told you not to go because it was too dangerous. The moment he saw that you guys were in danger, he was out of the building and heading your way. Kendo and Jiro screamed at Kirishima. Well, if he's scared of danger, then he chose the wrong career path. A voice said from behind them, Aizawa, you have a week of house arrest and you have to do all the chores, and after house arrest is up you have 3 weeks of detention. Dismissed. Everybody just stared at Aizawa, dumbfounded at the fact that Izuku was the only one getting punished when he was the one who broke the least amount of rules of the group. Yes, sir. Izuku responded with seemingly no emotion to him. Out of nowhere a slap is heard and everybody looked to see a pissed-off Midnight in front of Aizawa, and Aizawa with a red hand mark on his face. Overruled. Nizu said on top of Cementos' shoulder. Aizawa, you are suspended from teaching and hero work until you have properly grieved Mrs. Aizawa's death. Aizawa stomped off, leaving UA grounds, and everyone turned to look at Izuku to find him gone. They would have freaked out, but they also noticed that Kendo, Momo, and Jiro were also gone. It seemed that no matter how much he was hurting he wouldn't show it to them, yet those 3 were the only ones that he did show his pain to. Kirishima, you have 1 day of detention for assaulting a fellow classmate. Nizu says before the teachers took their leave except Midnight. I'll be replacing Aizawa as your homeroom teacher. Midnight announced. I'll see everyone in class tomorrow. All right, class. Midnight said, drawing everybody's attention to her. The provisional licensing exam is coming up shortly, and usually you wouldn't participate until your 2nd year, but due to recurring and recent events Nizu has said to let you participate in the exam this year. Everybody started to celebrate until they heard someone clear their throat in the back of the class. They turned and spotted Izuku holding a sleeping Katsumi, which caused all the girls to awe at the sight. Sorry, Kaminari said for the whole class. Izuku nodded his head before everybody turned their attention to the front of the class, all quietly celebrating. Now, before that time you need super moves, something that will tell the people that you've won the fight and give them their hope back. Midnight said. You need at least one, if not more. Doesn't Aizawa already have one? Ashido asked, getting confused looks from everybody. You know, that armored werewolf form? Technically that does count. Midnight pondered. Though it still needs a name unless he has one. Sorry, I haven't thought that far ahead. Izuku answered bashfully. What about Momo's dual cannons or Jiro's groundbreaking move? Yes, both of those count as super moves, so do either of you have names for them? Midnight asked and received shakes of the head from both. Well, for the rest of you we're heading to Gym Gamma so that way you can work on your moves and train. Everybody got up and followed Midnight to Gym Gamma, where Cementos was busy setting up areas for them to train and waiting for anyone that would need a specification. As soon as they arrived, everybody split off doing what they felt they needed to do to improve and get better. Meanwhile, Izuku's focusing on trying to get better control over the flow of OFA until he finally does, down to the smallest portion of power flow, meaning he can control the speed of power flow along with percentage, which also means that he can effectively double his power by increasing the flow speed. He powers up 50% and the ground underneath his feet cracks loudly, drawing everybody's attention to him, but he ignores them and then goes about increasing the speed of the flow to double, and he ends up standing in a crater and everybody gasps in shock before he goes to move and he's gone. The next thing they hear is a crash and he's halfway through a hole in the wall to the outside. That hurt. Izuku said, rubbing my head, ignoring the position he's in. I guess that works though. What happened? Are you alright? Kendo asked worriedly while Momo and Jiro kept searching for injuries. I'm fine, just pulled a stupid move. Izuku said, waving everybody off. I decided to attempt to double my flow of power in the muscle-shifted form instead of doing a slow increase. He explained. I'm not injured or anything, so you don't need to worry. Baka! Jiro yelled, storming off. I'll go after her to help her cool off. Momo said, following her. I'm sorry. Izuku said, sadly, not wanting to worry her and feeling bad that he did. Slowly everybody but Jiro and Momo went back to training after nobody could find them and didn't want to check the soundproof rooms. Izuku also went back to training but decided to be smart about it this time. This is how the next few days went. He soon mastered it before asking Cementos for an isolated area to try something. Izuku refused to tell anybody about it and didn't answer any questions about it except for the fact that he was doing it safely. It's time for the licensing exam and Izuku and the others are planning for all sorts of situations. The main thing is that everybody has agreed to stick together and help each other. Soon enough they exit the bus and Izuku handed Katsumi to Midnight, and soon enough another group of students showed up and one of them interrupted the cheer that Class 1A was using to psyche themselves up. "Aunt Emmy?" Izuku asked, seeing an orange bandana and light green hair. "Izuku?" she asked, unsure. "What happened? Where's Eraserhead?" Ms. Joke asked, seeing the buried sadness in Izuku's eyes. "A lot." Izuku answered vaguely. "I'll tell you about it after the exam." Ms. Joke hugged Izuku before everybody went their separate ways. As soon as everybody was inside, they were handed 3 sensors to place somewhere on their bodies. After that the rules were explained, it was time for the first event. Class 1A was walking along when they were attacked by a group of 10 or 12, but Izuku shifted into his necromancer form and summoned skeletons to protect everybody. "Pin them but don't hurt them." Izuku ordered the skeletons, and it was done quickly and efficiently. "Alright, those with non-offensive quirks tag now, those with ensure none of them break free and get one of our classmates." "Yes, class rep." The class responded. After that only the non-offensive had passed, leaving the rest to work, but they decided to split off from Izuku as a way to prove to him that they can handle themselves and don't need to be protected. "I'll see you after you pass the event," Izuku said with a bright smile, receiving several bright smiles in return. "Good luck, not that you'll need it." As soon as they split up, Izuku went into the sky to watch after them without their knowledge. "What's Izuku doing?" Ms. Joke asked from beside Midnight. "And I didn't know you had a kid." "Izuku is doing what he does best," Midnight responds, confusing Ms. Joke. "Protecting the class." "I met Izuku before the UA entrance exams. He had so much life in his eyes while he was training," Ms. Joke commented. "What happened to end most of it?" "A lot," Midnight answered sadly. "This here is Katsumi. Izuku unofficially adopted her, and more than likely as soon as he will make it official." "What happened to him?" Ms. Joke asked more directly. "He said he'll tell you after the exam." Midnight responded, not wanting to talk about it. "Now, say hi to your great niece Aunt Emmy." Midnight passed Katsumi over to Ms. Joke, who relented and started cooing at Katsumi, much to Katsumi's delight. They watched as Izuku kept an eye on his classmates until the last one had passed, then Izuku swooped down out of the sky and got another participant out before flying to the rest area for those that had passed. Izuku's classmates already knew that he had watched over them and they understood it, but it did annoy them with how closely he kept an eye on them. It was time for the next part, and without any explanation the walls just fell, revealing a disaster. Izuku set about getting everybody in line quickly. "Everybody listen up," Izuku shouted. "I need scouts to look for any immediate danger." A group set out immediately. "I need people to set up a first aid station in case of injuries." Another group set to work. "And the rest we need to look to civilians." After that everybody had a job and set to accomplish it. "Izuku is a born leader," Ms. Joke commented, surprised. "Not born made," Midnight corrected with a sad look in her eyes. Ms. Joke noticed the sadness but knew that Midnight wouldn't explain what it was about, so she didn't ask. Both of them watched how gentle Izuku was with all the injured civilians and were pleasantly surprised. They also noticed how extra careful Izuku was with making the children trust him before he even approached them, as a way of keeping them calm to prevent further injuries. As Izuku was delivering another person safely to the first aid station, the wall of the exam arena exploded and at least 100 people came through the hole, including pro hero Endeavor. Todoroki showed up and rushed headfirst straight at Endeavor. Todoroki was losing the fight, and badly, until Izuku shifted his wings onto his back and plucked Todoroki away from Endeavor before Endeavor realized what happened. "Todoroki, use your ice from a distance strategically and trap him. I'll then turn it into forever ice, meaning it can't be melted and he doesn't have the physical strength to bust it if you make it thick enough," Izuku explained, and Todoroki nodded. Izuku then landed before shifting forms into his ice elemental. "What's he doing? That'll make him more susceptible to Endeavor's attacks, not more resilient," Ms. Joke said, very worried. "He's not intending to fight Endeavor head-on. Didn't you see him making a plan with Todoroki, the dual color-haired kid?" Midnight asked her. That's Endeavor's son, and judging by how Todoroki reacted to Endeavor's presence, I don't think he's a good father. Todoroki started slowly making the cage and Endeavor laughed before trying to melt it only for nothing to happen to the ice. Izuku then made his presence known by phasing out of the ice. It is done, that is forever ice, it cannot be melted no matter how hot the flame. Izuku explained and Endeavor raged, but no matter what he tried he couldn't get out. A buzzer sounded meaning the end of the exam, and Endeavor was still raging when Izuku went to free him. Principal Nizu appeared out of nowhere. "Do not free him, young nephew," Principal Nizu said, confusing everybody. "Endeavor, you are hereby stripped of your hero license and are under arrest for several crimes, all abuse and bribery related, along with the murders you've committed under the guise of collateral damage," Principal Nizu said, and Endeavor tried to throw a fireball at him, but Izuku raised an ice wall blocking his attacks from reaching them. "I'll add 2 more attempted murders to your case files." Police then showed up and put anti-Quirk cuffs on Endeavor, much to his rage. After the ice was removed by Izuku, Endeavor attacked the police officers and headed straight for Izuku and Principal Nizu, but Izuku shifted into his werewolf form and grabbed Endeavor by the throat and dangled him in the air for a split second before slamming him onto the ground, knocking him out cold. Izuku then shifted back and did a quick check over on Principal Nizu to ensure he wasn't injured before turning into a phoenix and healing the officers who were injured by Endeavor in his escape attempt before heading over to Principal Nizu and healing his scars, much to his delight. "Thank you, Izuku. Now if I'm not mistaken, after you receive your provisional license you'll be required in a discussion with Ms. Joke," Principal Nizu said, walking off with the officers who are carrying the now unconscious former hero. Izuku walked off towards the desk where everybody stared at him in awe, and he was handed his provisional license, and he walked over towards the stands where he was met with a hug from both Midnight and Ms. Joke. "I'm alright, Midnight-sensei and Aunt Emmy," Izuku said, calming them down a little bit. "Let's head literally anywhere private to hold the conversation you're wanting, Aunt Emmy," Izuku said with a pleading look in his eyes. Midnight handed Katsumi over to Izuku, who then cooed at her, causing her to giggle and Ms. Joke's heart to melt at the sight. "Can we head over and say hi to your mom before we have this deep talk?" Ms. Joke says. "Sorry, we can't do that," Izuku says with a sad smile. "She died a few months ago." Ms. Joke covered her mouth and was going to apologize, but Izuku beat her to it. "You don't have to apologize, you didn't know," Izuku said with a bright smile, but you could see the sadness in it. "Midnight-sensei, can you take over the conversation? I've got a diaper to change." "Sure," Midnight says with pity in her voice, which surprised Ms. Joke as she's used to the show Midnight puts on. Izuku walked off to the bathrooms meant for families that have changing stations in them, while Midnight continued where Izuku left off. After his mom's death, Sho turned his back on the kid and even started to lash out at him, blaming him for her death. Even though he never said it out loud, we all knew that's what was going on, but we couldn't really do anything until he actually crossed the line between training and going too far. Midnight started and Ms. Joke already wanted that to be all. Then during the training camp incident, a student got captured right in front of him, and even though he saved 2 other students, he, metaphorically, beat himself up for it and probably still is, hence the watching his classmates so closely. Ms. Joke nodded her head as she knew that is the type of person Izuku is. Then immediately after that, after we got back to the school, Izuku went to visit his aunt and uncle, only for them to be ended right before he got there by the villain Ground Zero, and then fend him off to protect Katsumi, who was going to be Ground Zero's next victim, until the pros arrived, and Izuku then searched the house for her and eventually found only for Endeavor to have set the house on fire, so he had to get permission to use his quirk to leap out the second-story window and use wings to land safely on the ground. Ms. Joke's eyes begged Midnight that was the end, but Midnight shook her head. Then a group of students went to rescue the student that was kidnapped. They asked Izuku to come along, but he said no, as he now has to take care of Katsumi. Yet the instant they were in danger, Izuku was out the door and gone before I could even think of saying no. After he saved them, one of them punched him in the face for not going with them in the first place, and Sho decided to punish Izuku for the whole thing and letting it slide for the others, so at that point we were finally able to step in and stop what was happening, that was just a week ago about. How can so much bad happen to such a kind kid? Ms. Joke said, nearly crying. I mean, the kid cleaned an entire beach for training when he actually didn't need it. I think he just wanted an excuse to clean the beach. Maybe I shouldn't mention that his mother was ended right in front of him while he was pinned down by Muscular, causing him to have a split in his personality, though both are heroic and kind souls, and one can be scary if that's what is necessary. Midnight pondered aloud without realizing it. Ms. Joke burst into tears on Midnight's shoulder while Midnight just patted her back in an attempt to comfort and soothe her. This story will be in third person or reader's perspective. We see a 4-year-old Izuku.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.